Chapter 879. The expression on Jiang Yuqing's face finally cracked, and he cried out in shock. "Why is this thing with you?" Could it be that the person who secretly broke into the zither room and stole this phoenix tail zither was Yuqi Song? That person's aura was hidden extremely well. He had never thought that it would be related to Yuqi Song. Didn't this old man say just now? This is a big gift sent by someone yesterday. Yuqi Song stroked his beard and showed the phoenix tail zither to everyone. Everyone could take a look and see if this is the zither that the emperor's concubine had back then. Everyone looked at each other and fell silent for a moment. Eldest young master Jiang should be the most familiar with this thing. Why don't you check it out? Otherwise, someone will say that this old man took a fake thing and created a rumor out of thin air here. As Yuqi Song spoke, he even pushed it forward. Jiang Yuqing was standing 10 steps away. With his eyesight, from the moment he saw this thing, he had already confirmed that this was indeed the one that was lost in the zither room. However, he really couldn't figure out why this thing would be with Yuqi Song. He said that someone sent it yesterday. Who was that person? Let me take a look. In the quiet and strange atmosphere, a person walked out. It was Yuan Wei. He walked over with a smile. Back then, Her Highness the Emperor's concubine liked this zither very much, and specially asked me to prepare many matching items. Therefore, I am quite familiar with this thing. I will identify it. Everyone should trust me, right? Yuqi Song handed the item over. Please. Although Yuan Wei's position wasn't comparable to the three dukes, his status was also very noble because his family had been passed down for thousands of years. His words carried a lot of weight. Yuan Wei carefully took the phoenix tail zither and looked around carefully. His expression gradually became serious. After a moment, he nodded. This is indeed the Empress concubine's item. Moreover, there's indeed a dragon trapping array inside this zither. Let me take a look too. Jian Shai finally couldn't help but come over and take a look. There seemed to be a glimmer of light flickering on the phoenix-tailed zither. Flipping it over, one could see that there was indeed a palm-sized Xian formation at the bottom, and it was shining brightly. Jiang Yuqing's mind was in chaos. Back then, he had only been focused on dealing with the Shangguan Yu and hadn't paid much attention to the phoenix-tail zither. In the past 2 years, he had rubbed the rosin on the phoenix-tail zither countless times, but he had never noticed this. Thinking of this, he immediately said, "This Xian formation didn't exist before. I've never seen a Xian formation like this before. It was only a level 3 Xian formation, and any Xian master could carve it on it." Pavilion Master Yuqi, even if you suspect that there's a problem with the princess's death, there's no need to use such methods to deceive everyone, right? Wei Qi Song laughed coldly when he heard this. Of course you didn't see it before, because there was a seal on the Xian formation. It was only after this old man broke the seal that this profound formation was revealed. Jiang Yuqing froze on the spot. What seal? He actually knew nothing about this. This is indeed the dragon trapping array. And this aura is indeed from the princess's hands. Jian Shai nodded affirmatively. Because the material of this phoenix tail zither is extremely precious and special, ordinary people can't leave any traces on it. Although this Xian formation is only a level 3 Xian formation, the person who can do this is definitely a top-notch Xian master. If I'm not wrong, the princess should have used the power of her Tianjing Yuan Meridian to seal this Xian formation and conceal its aura. Yuqi Song stroked his beard. That's right. This old man only saw this dragon trapping array after breaking the seal. Shangguan Yu's strength had already reached level 8 Xian master back then. If she wanted to hide something, it definitely wouldn't be a difficult matter. Jiang Yuqing's heart kept sinking, and his entire body turned ice cold. He had overlooked it. He had truly overlooked it. He had actually forgotten that he wasn't Shangguan Yu's opponent at all, which was why he couldn't even see through her methods. And now, all of this had become conclusive evidence. After that, a few more people came forward to take a look. They all nodded and confirmed that this was indeed left behind by the princess back then. Because she had a Tianjing Yuan Meridian, her aura was very easy to recognize. Anyone with some status in the Tianling dynasty would be able to confirm it with just one look. What's this? As Jian Shai spoke, he suddenly saw that there seemed to be something under the Xian formation. He moved closer, and his expression changed slightly. There's a word of blood on it. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. If nothing really happened, why would there be a word of blood on the phoenix tail zither? Moreover, she used such complicated methods to conceal it. Jiang Yuqing's heart thumped violently. It almost jumped out his chest. All the blood in his body seemed to freeze at this moment. No. Everything happened very quickly back then. Shang Guanyu couldn't possibly have the time and energy to do all this. Jiang Yuqing kept admonishing himself, but there was still a voice in the depths of his heart that kept ringing. Why not? She was smart and quick-witted. Was there anything she couldn't do? This word of blood was also left behind by the princess. Jian Shai's expression had completely turned cold. Yuan Wei and the others who were standing nearby also had a change in expression. Naturally, they recognized him as well. What's the word of blood on it? Someone couldn't wait to ask. Yu Qi-song laughed, but there was no smile in his eyes. Jiang Yuqing, you should know what the word of blood on it says, right? Jiang Yuqing's temples throbbed. I don't, Jiang. Jian Shai suddenly raised the phoenix tail zither and shouted sternly. The word of Jiang is on it. Jiang Yuqing, isn't this your Jiang? Digression, Tianling scepter. I heard that someone said that I'm a clown. February, yes. They're all talking about you. Tianling scepter. Angry. February, yes. So I want to have more chapters for them. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 880. His voice was like thunder as it fell heavily. In an instant, everyone was shocked on the spot. The bloody words hidden on the phoenix tail guqin were actually Jiang. Anyone with a brain could guess that the emperor's concubine had used such a complicated method to leave this secret signal on the phoenix tail guqin. There was definitely a hidden meaning. Dragon trapping array bloody words Jiangison, this implying that Jiang Yuqing is the one who harmed me? There was dead silence in front of Lang Kuan Hall. Jiang Yuqing's ears were ringing. Jian Shai's stern questioning was like a heavy punch, catching him off guard and completely stupefied on the spot. He thought that everything back then was flawless and that no one would be able to find any clues. But he never expected that Shang Guanyu had actually left a trick up her sleeve. There was actually such a shocking secret hidden on the phoenix tail guqin. Everyone's gazes converged on him. Suspicion, shock, anger, all kinds of gazes enveloped Jiang Yuqing like flames. Even his entire body felt like it was burning up. A sense of crisis that he had never felt before welled up in his heart. Jiang Yuqing had never been as embarrassed as he was now. He tried his best to calm himself down and try to make his voice sound calm. The word Jiang doesn't mean anything. Not to mention the Tianling dynasty. There are countless people with the surname Jiang in Xiling City alone. Why are you so sure that it's me at first glance? What if this word doesn't refer to my surname, but something else? Jian Shai was so angry that he laughed. Jiang Yuqing, don't play dumb here. There are many people with the surname Jiang, but I'm afraid there aren't many who can be remembered by the emperor's concubine, right? If she wasn't forced into a desperate situation, the emperor's concubine definitely wouldn't have left such a hint. In other words, it's very likely that something happened to her in the zither room. And you, aren't you the one who usually accompanies her in the zither room? Do you really not know anything about this? Jiang Yuqing's eyes flickered. Mountain Lord Jin's words aren't without reason. But this matter indeed has nothing to do with me. Back then, the emperor's concubine and I were in love, and we were about to get married. What reason do I have to harm her? You'll have to ask yourself. Wei Qi-song suddenly interjected, his voice flat and indifferent. Didn't you also get together with the third princess in less than 2 years after the emperor's concubine left? You even got married? Well said. As soon as Yu Qi-song finished speaking, another powerful voice came from the other side. It was none other than Meng Jingji, who had been extremely dissatisfied with this marriage from the very beginning. Even if I don't ask you to be the emperor's concubine and never marry again, you should at least show some sincerity, right? In the end, right after you finished the princess funeral, you were together with the third princess. You still have the face to say that you were in love. Heh, if this was the Western frontier, someone like you wouldn't be considered a man. Even women wouldn't take a fancy to you. Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan were together. Their relationship was fake, but their identity was real. If Shang Wanwan didn't have such a status, why would Jiang Yuqing even spare her a glance? Although Meng Jingji was stationed at the Western frontier all year round and didn't return to the Western Tomb often, this didn't mean that he knew nothing about the Western Tomb. He was a military general, but he also had good eyesight. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to sit in this position for dozens of years. Back then, even Mu Qinghe couldn't replace him when she led troops to quell the rebellion in the Great Desolate Swamp. This person's ability could be seen at a glance. Jiang Yuqing's face instantly darkened. Shang Wanwan was still shocked and worried about the Phoenix Tail Zither, but in the next moment, she heard that she was also being scolded. She was so angry that her face turned white. But when she glanced at Meng Jingji, she forcefully swallowed back those unpleasant words. This person was a tough nut to crack. Today's troubles were already enough. If she provoked Meng Jingji, it would be like adding oil to the fire. Jiang Yuqing remained unmoved. He only said indifferently, "My marriage with Wan'er has nothing to do with this. Even if there's really something fishy about the princess's death, everyone shouldn't be able to pin the crime on me just based on the word blood, right?" He planned to insist on this point. It's true that the word Jiang was written on it, and it's also true that he was one of the closest people to the princess back then. Anyone who saw this would inevitably make the connection. But as long as they couldn't produce any other evidence, he still had some leeway. "That's right. You have no evidence. My Jiang family won't let you off just because you're slandering Yuqing. We'll be at your mercy." Jiang Lizwa stood out and hollered in a low voice. "This old man wants to see who it is that wants to drag my Jiang family down with him. How dare you pour this basin of dirty water on my son?" Jiang Lizwa was a grand tutor after all, and his status was very high. In addition, Jiang Yuqing was now married to the third princess, so the entire Jiang family status had risen by another level. Ordinary people really couldn't afford to offend the Jiang family. However, Yuqi Song suddenly laughed. "Everyone will eventually find out who this basin of dirty water belongs to. Since you want evidence, I'll give it to you." Jiang Yuqing's brows twitched harshly. Seeing Yuqi Song's confident look, does he really have any evidence? Yuqi Song stared at him and slowly said, "I watched the princess grow up with me. I'm indebted to the princess's love for me, and she treats me as half a master. Ever since the princess's death, my Chongshu Pavilion has also suffered continuous attacks. The pavilion's elders and disciples have all been beaten up, and there aren't many people left. It's almost impossible for the mountain gate to hold on. The reason for all of this is actually just that I want to investigate the princess's death." Yuqi Song's expression gradually turned solemn and cold, and even the surrounding space seemed to freeze along with it. "It's not just my Chongshu Pavilion. In the past 2 years, there have been many people who want to investigate the truth behind the princess's death. However, these people have either died or been injured, and some have even quietly disappeared, never to appear again. It's as if someone is deliberately obstructing them by hook or by crook. Everyone should be aware of this. In this world, the one who doesn't want the truth of that matter to be exposed the most is most likely the person who harmed the princess." A few people inwardly nodded. Although no one had said this on the surface, everyone knew in their hearts. Jiang Lizwa was so angry that he laughed. "What? Yuqi Song, do you mean that the one who secretly killed your Chongshu Pavilion is my son?" Jiang Yuqing also frowned. "Pavilion Master Yuqi, I've already personally sent Chi Dai to you. It's true that he used Chaos Yuan gravel on the Chongshu Pavilion, but I truly didn't know about this matter before, whether it's true or not. Let him come over and we'll know when we confront him." Yuqi Song said indifferently. Jiang Yuqing felt that this was extremely absurd and couldn't help but say, "You know that Chi Dai is already delirious, so how can you confront him?" "Oh, you're talking about this." Yuqi Song suddenly laughed. "This old man has already cured him." A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 881. Chi-de, you say it yourself. Yuchi-song ignored the shock on Jiang Yuqing and the others' faces and suddenly turned around to wave at someone. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He had been standing behind Yuchi-song and the others, so everyone subconsciously thought that he was a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion and didn't pay him any attention. After hearing Yuchi-song's words, he walked forward and rubbed his lower jaw for a while before taking off a thin mask. Under the mask, the person's cheeks were thin and his face was haggard, as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. His left ear was gone, and there was only a scar the size of a bowl. It was a ghastly sight. It was Chi-de. Jiang Yuqing looked at Chi-de, who should have died in the Chongshu Pavilion, and his hands were already tightly clenched in his sleeves. He didn't die. He actually didn't die. Most importantly, the pair of muddy eyes had actually regained their clarity at this moment. Apart from looking a little weak, he was no different from an ordinary person. Chi-de raised his head to look at Jiang Yuqing, and his emotions suddenly became intense. His eyes were filled with anger and resentment. His entire body trembled, and he wanted nothing more than to immediately charge forward and chop Jiang Yuqing into 8 pieces. However, his chest was surging with anger, and he couldn't say a single word. He could only let out a hoarse whimper that was difficult to understand. His throat has been drugged, and he can't speak anymore. Yuchi-song looked indifferently at Jiang Yuqing. I wonder what the person who drugged him was worried that he would say. Yuan Wei glanced at the situation, and his eyes moved slightly. Pavilion Master Yuchi, this Chi-de it's a long story. Then, Yuchi-song gave a simple account of finding the messed yuan gravel and finding the person who had secretly tried to kill them. Messed yuan gravel can only be found in Nanjiang, and not many people in the entire Tianling dynasty have been in Nanjiang. Coincidentally, eldest young Master Jiang brought people there not long after the emperor's concubine's death. This old man then asked him to help investigate. After a long time, he sent Chi-de over, saying that he was the one who did it. At that time, Chi-de had been tortured and beaten. He was unconscious and could not answer any questions. Even if this old man wanted to ask more, it would be impossible. Jiang Yuqing said coldly, Pavilion Master Wei Qi, are you doubting me? Chi-de's body has traces of the mixed yuan gravel's backlash. You clearly saw it that day. Why are you not going to admit it now? Wei Qi-song, however, merely smiled. Chi-de, raise your arm for everyone to see. Chi-de did as he was told and rolled up his sleeves, revealing his forearms. On the inside of his forearm, there was a red line that extended from his palm upwards. Is this the evidence of the messed yuan gravel's backlash? Jianshai was shocked when he saw it. He immediately moved closer to take a closer look. There were very few people in the entire Tianling dynasty who could recognize this. Otherwise, Yuchi-song and the others would not have taken so long to figure out this matter. That's right. This is indeed the evidence of the messed yuan gravel in his body, but the backlash. Jiang Yuqing heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Since Pavilion Master Wei Qi also said so, then where did this suspicion come from? Yuchi-song pointed at Chi-de. Naturally, it's because the messed yuan gravel in Chi-de's body backfired much later than when we discovered the messed yuan gravel. To be honest, the matter of the messed yuan gravel was discovered on the day Lu Yu and Wanzhou officially entered my Chongshu Pavilion. Wanzhou grew up in Nanjiang, so it was him who recognized this thing. In the following 2 days, we thought of a way to clean up all the messed yuan gravel on Qingyuan Mountain. Logically speaking, the person who did this should have suffered the backlash at that time. However, all the injuries on Chi-de's body were added within this month. With every sentence Yuchi-song said, Jiang Yuqing's heart sank an inch. Apart from me, there are also many celestial physicians with superb strength present. If you don't believe me, you can come forward and check for yourself. Chi-de's injuries clearly appeared after I went to ask Jiang Yuqing for help. As soon as Yuchi-song finished speaking, everyone quieted down and looked at Jiang Yuqing strangely. At this point, even a fool could tell that there was a problem. If Jiang Yuqing didn't do this because he had a guilty conscience, then why? Chi-de, who caused the injuries on your body? Yuchi Song asked. Chide pointed at Jiang Yuqing angrily and let out a hoarse cry of despair. Just take it that he did it for interrogation, so let's not talk about it for now. Then, who planted the messed yuan gravel in your body? Chide still pointed at Jiang Yuqing, his finger trembling slightly because of resentment and anger. Jiang Yuqing stared at him. Chide, you and I are master and servant. I've never done anything to let you down. Why are you slandering me like this? Whether it's slander or not, everyone can see it clearly. I heard that you gathered all the subordinates who had gone to Nanjiang together and interrogated them one by one. After that, most of them went back. Only Chide went missing. The next time he appeared, it was you who sent him to my Chongshu pavilion. Wasn't it easy to do something during such a long time? Thinking about it, he should have been poisoned by the messed yuan gravel at that time. Yuchi Song said slowly, but every word was like a heavy stone that smashed fiercely into Jiang Yuqing's heart. Do you have any explanation for all this? Everyone looked at Jiang Yuqing, waiting for his answer. In fact, even if he didn't say anything, everyone already had their own guesses in their hearts. What Yuchi Song said couldn't be faked. It was almost certainly true. Then, there was indeed something wrong with Jiang Yuqing. Faced with everyone's burning gazes, Jiang Yuqing took a deep breath and said coldly, Chide followed me through life and death. Why should I treat him like this? At that time, Pavilion Master Yuchi took the initiative to ask me for help. That's why I did this. In the end, you're saying that I lied to you? What good would that do for me? Fabricating a fake was naturally to cover up the real one. Yuchi Song's lips twitched without a smile. His gaze was sharp and cold, like a sharp sword that wanted to tear off Jiang Yuqing's hypocritical mask. If eldest young Master Jiang doesn't mind, can you show your arm for everyone to see? There's a question that this old man has been wanting to ask you for a long time. Your arm was injured not earlier or later, but on the day we cleaned up the messed yuan gravel and caused the person who secretly poisoned you to suffer a backlash? Jiang Yuqing, can you answer these questions one by one? Asked Jiang Yuqing. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 882. Yuchi Song pressed on, his series of questions almost suffocating Jiang Yuqing. He originally thought that Chide would die soon after arriving at Chongshu Pavilion. Even if he didn't die, the people at Chongshu Pavilion would kill him out of hatred. Even if Yuchi Song and the others had doubts, they wouldn't be able to stir up any more waves. This matter would be closed. But he never expected that not only did Yuchi Song and the others fail to kill Chide, they even tried their best to save him. No matter how he thought about it, he actually left himself a huge problem. Jiang Yuqing was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have made such an unnecessary move. Even if Yuchi Song and the others kept suspecting him, they wouldn't be able to find any evidence. It would be a waste of effort. If he had thought more at that time, he wouldn't have fallen into such a trap. Now, the timing of Chide's backlash from the chaos yuan gravel didn't match up. Instead, it became the best evidence for them to refute him. Jiang Yuqing understood that if he couldn't give a reasonable explanation for this matter, then from now on, he would have to bear this stigma. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, I really don't know what's going on. Chide used to be my subordinate, but after returning from Nanjiang, I dismissed them all. If it weren't for helping you this time, I wouldn't have gone to look for them at all. For such a long time, no one knows what they've been doing or who they've been following. Maybe they've already changed masters and are targeting me. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth and only said that he had nothing to do with this matter. There's one thing that many people might still remember. Previously, I was ambushed in my residence and was injured. Because of this, I sent people to track down that person's whereabouts. And the person I was looking for at that time was actually Chide's good friend. To be honest, that person's name is Xiaomu. He and Chide are good brothers who have gone through fire and water together. After being dismissed, the two of them didn't have any other relatives, so they became neighbors. They took care of each other and had a very good relationship. Since Xiaomu was able to assassinate me, who knows if Chide did not have the same goal. Although Jiang Yuqing's explanation was somewhat weak, it was not completely unconvincing. After all, The news of him being assassinated in the Jiang mansion had spread like wildfire among the aristocratic families. To say that he was putting on a show was a bit too much. During this period of time, Chi Dai has indeed been detained by me. However, in the beginning, I only detained him because I wanted to investigate Xiaomu. Who would have thought that he would later discover that he had actually suffered a backlash from the chaos Yuan gravel? I thought that he was the person Pavilion Master Wei Qi was looking for. After interrogating him, I sent him away. As for the rest, I really don't know. Jiang Yuqing cupped his hands at Yuqi's song. Speaking of which, I was negligent in this matter. I hope Pavilion Master Wei Qi won't blame me. But these things really have nothing to do with me. Back then, experts were as numerous as clouds in the Chongshu Pavilion. How could I have the ability to kill most of the cultivators in the Chongshu Pavilion in a single night? Pavilion Master Wei Qi, you think too highly of me. Hearing Jiang Yuqing's words, everyone's expressions were different. Many people's eyes were wavering. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but sneer as she listened from the side. Jiang Yuqing's mouth was as eloquent as always. He could make black sound white and wrong sound right. Just now, Yuqi's song had clearly laid out the evidence. It was almost irrefutable. He was actually able to rely on his glib tongue to earn a place for himself. She had really underestimated him. Eldest young Master Jiang. Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. According to what you said, the Jiang character on the phoenix-tailed zither has nothing to do with you. This chaos Yuan gravel also has nothing to do with you, right? Jiang Yuqing's expression was indifferent, as if he was very frank. Yes. Back then, I was about to marry the Empress concubine. Why would I do these things and painstakingly scheme to harm her? Everyone looked at each other. Actually, this was also the most strange thing about them. Jiang Yuqing's status back then was definitely higher than the Empress concubine's. This marriage only had benefits for him, no harm at all. But any normal person wouldn't personally ruin their own future and happiness, right? One had to know that back then, many young talents wanted this opportunity, but they didn't succeed. Because of his engagement with the Emperor's concubine, Jiang Yuqing had been envied by many of Xiling City's aristocratic families for a very long time. Back then, he really seemed to have been very attentive to the Emperor's concubine. There was really no reason for him to do this. No matter what he wanted, as long as he married the Emperor's concubine smoothly, wouldn't it be logical? Why did he have to go through so much trouble, killing the Emperor's concubine and eliminating the weeds by the roots? And in the end, it was just a big wedding with the third princess, Shang Wanwan. Compared to the Emperor's concubine, it was even worse. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully, as if she was also moved by his words. That's true. I heard that the Emperor's concubine treated you well back then, and you also won the Emperor's concubine's favor with great difficulty. Originally, everything was fine, so you really had no reason to betray her, right? She spoke slowly, as if she was stating a fact, but also as if she was faintly puzzled. For some reason, when Jiang Yuqing looked at Chu Luiyue like this, an inexplicable sense of apprehension and panic arose in his heart. Her words seemed to be hinting at something. Chu Luiyue suddenly smiled. On her beautiful face, there was undisguised curiosity and mockery. When Jiang Yuqing saw her smile, he was actually in a trance. Her clear, black, jade-like eyes seemed to have a dark light flowing, like a sharp sword, piercing straight at him. Since eldest young Master Jiang has such deep feelings for the Empress concubine, then back then, why did you join forces with Xiahou Rong to forge a document to lure the tiger away from the mountain, tricking the 13th you out of Xiling? Chu Luiyue said this sentence clearly and clearly. In an instant, almost everyone was stunned on the spot. The 13th you? Didn't they betray their master back then? For this reason, Jiang Yuqing even issued an order to kill them, which had not been revoked until today. What exactly did Chu Luiyue mean by forging a document to lure the tiger away from the mountain? Everyone's gaze fell on Jiang Yuqing. Even Xiahou Rong, who was originally standing in the crowd, instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. Xiahou Rong didn't expect Chu Luiyue to suddenly mention him and even directly reveal what happened back then. He was completely stunned, and his face turned pale. He almost subconsciously retorted sternly. Chu Luiyue, what nonsense are you talking about? Chu Luiyue chuckled. I'm just telling the truth. You? How dare you? Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you have the Chongshu Pavilion behind you. If you can't produce evidence today, don't blame me. Before he finished speaking, Chu Luiyue raised her hand and shook it gently. A secret letter appeared in front of everyone. This is the Imperial edict that Lord Xiahou personally forged back then. Why don't Lord Xiahou take a look at it personally? The Love Network provided a better reading experience. Chapter 883. Xiahou Rong's voice stopped abruptly. He stared at the secret letter in Chu Luiyue's hands in shock. His face was as pale as a ghost, and he instinctively denied it. Impossible. I've been keeping that item in my study, and even Xiahou Tingan doesn't know where I put it. How did it end up in Chu Luiyue's hands? Officer Xiahou, what exactly is going on? Jiang Yuqing's face was terrifyingly cold as he questioned. Xiahou Rong actually let Chu Luiyue get such an important item. Isn't he courting death? Xiahou Rong glanced at him and felt guilty. I didn't. I'm loyal to Her Majesty. How can I do such a thing? You'll know once you see it. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he passed the letter to Yuan Wei. Officer Yuan, you're very familiar with Her Majesty's handwriting. Why don't you take a look at it personally and see if there's anything wrong with this letter? Yuan Wei's expression turned solemn as he received it with both hands. This secret letter had already been opened by someone, but the remaining golden ink on it was clearly specially used by the royal family. Even the size and paper of this envelope were strictly according to the corresponding standards. Looking at it dazedly, it really looked the same as the real thing. He opened the envelope and took out a letter inside. There were only a few lines of words on it, and the main idea was that there was a dangerous situation at the borders and that the 13 U guards were ordered to deal with it. Logically speaking, the 13 U guards were the princess's private guards and wouldn't listen to anyone else's orders. However, as the princess would usually deal with many things at the borders, and this letter kept hinting that this matter might threaten the princess, the 13 U guards were persuaded to go together. As the princess's wedding was around the corner, it wasn't convenient for her to leave, so the 13 U guards let her stay in Xiling while they went to the borders alone and planned to return after dealing with this matter. They then realized that something was amiss and rushed back to Xiling with all their might, but they were still too late. These people had set up layers upon layers of traps in order to distract all the reliable forces around her and finally make a move on her. Chu Luiyue tried his best to guard against it, but he didn't expect these two people to plot to kill her. How could he defend against that? This envelope, this letter, this ink, and the seal are all exclusive to His Majesty. But this handwriting is not His Majesty's. Yuan Wei frowned. Furthermore, this secret letter does seem to be from 2 years ago. The Yuan family had always been loyal to the Tianling dynasty. Since Yuan Wei said so, then it was an indisputable fact. If that was the case, then everything would make sense. Back then, someone had first forged such a letter and transferred the 13 U guards out of Xiling. Then, taking advantage of the fact that there was no one by the princess' side, they had secretly tried to kill her. Finally, he did not forget to eliminate all those who wanted to investigate the truth. This series of methods could be said to be flawless. If someone hadn't planned this beforehand, it would have been impossible to achieve this. This was clearly forcing the Empress concubine into a dead end. Yuan Wei had a grave expression as he looked at Chu Luiyue. Miss Chu, may I ask if this letter was really found in the Xiahou residence? Chu Luiyue said with a smile. Of course. In this world, there aren't many people who can forge such a genuine secret letter from His Majesty, right? Other than the handwriting, everything else is real. It was obvious that this was something that only a person who was deeply trusted by His Majesty could do. No matter how one thought about it, Xiahou Rong was one of the 3 Grand Tutors. He usually assisted His Majesty and had the most interactions with His Majesty. He was also the most convenient and easiest to do this. This time, even the surrounding officials' expressions changed as they looked at Xiahou Rong. Forging an imperial edict was a capital offense. If the situation was serious, It was very likely to implicate the three families. Was Xiahou Rong crazy? He actually dared to do such a thing. Lord Xiahou, don't you plan to explain? The gentle smile on Yuan Wei's face had disappeared and was replaced by a cold expression. The Yuan family had never participated in the struggle for power in the imperial court. But if it involved His Majesty, then this matter was much more serious. They had to investigate to the end. Xiahou Rong made up his mind and intended to deny it. Chu Liwei, you said that this was found in my Xiahou residence. Do you have evidence? Who knows if it was done by someone else? You're using it to frame me. I, Xiahou Rong, am loyal and devoted to His Majesty. I have never done anything to betray His Majesty. Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. Since Lord Xiahou is so determined, do you dare to swear? If you really did something to betray His Majesty, then the entire Xiahou family will be completely destroyed. Xiahou Rong choked, but he still braced himself and said, I have a clear conscience. Why wouldn't I dare? If I really betrayed His Majesty, then let me die without a burial place. Chu Liwei crossed his arms and touched his chin. You haven't finished yet. Isn't there still the entire family? Xiahou Rong's eyes twitched fiercely. Chu Liwei, don't go overboard. I'm going overboard. I'm trying my best to prove your innocence. Chu Liwei widened his eyes slightly. Didn't you say yourself that your loyalty to His Majesty can be witnessed by heaven and earth? Why don't you dare to continue? Xiahou Rong was in a dilemma. If he didn't say it, Chu Liwei and the others would definitely not let it go, and he would appear to be very guilty. But if he said it, there's a God watching over us. Lord Xiahou, if you are upright, what can't you say? Chu Liwei said lightly, but every word was like an extremely sharp knife, forcing Xiahou Rong to a dead end bit by bit. No one in the surroundings spoke, but every gaze seemed to have materialized and landed on his body, forming an invisible pressure that made it difficult for him to breathe. Jiang Yuqing said coldly, Lord Xiahou, you have a clear conscience. Why can't you swear? If Xiahou Rong really tore a hole in him, the consequences would be unimaginable. Xiahou Rong gritted his teeth. I, Xiahou Rong, swear, if I really did something wrong to His Majesty, I'll let everyone in my Xiahou residence die a horrible death. Clap, clap, clap. In a dead silence, the sound of applause suddenly sounded from not far away. Clap after clap, extremely rhythmic. At the same time, a deep middle-aged man's voice followed. Lord Xiahou, well said. Hearing this voice, Xiahou Rong's face changed dramatically. Even Jiang Yuqing, Shang Wanwan, and the others suddenly opened their eyes wide and looked back. They saw a person in a bright yellow dragon robe slowly walking out of Lonquan Hall. Perhaps because he was bettered all year round, his figure was a lot thinner, but his frame was tall and his shoulders were straight. Standing there, he still had a noble aura around him. It was the current emperor of the Tianling dynasty, Shang Wanyu. Digression, it's about 12:30 p.m., a little late. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the AI network. Chapter 884. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. If all the previous disputes were surging undercurrents, then the appearance of Shangguan Yu completely set off stormy waves in everyone's hearts. Everyone in the Tianling dynasty knew that the current emperor was seriously ill and in a coma, and had not woken up for 2 years. Many people even guessed that he might never wake up. Unexpectedly, not only did he wake up, but he also appeared at this time. Upon hearing this, Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat as she instinctively looked up. Although she had guessed that her father would appear today, she still couldn't suppress the joy and excitement in her heart when she saw him standing there with her own eyes. Seeing that familiar kind face, her mind went blank for a moment. Everything around her suddenly blurred at this moment, and only that one person occupied her sight and became clearer and clearer. Chu Liwei opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything. All that was left in her heart was nostalgia at this moment. Finally, she saw him again. At that time, she felt that there was no way out, and her father was controlled by them. so she finally decided to commit suicide. However, after her rebirth, she inadvertently learned that her father was actually still alive, but in a coma. Although she didn't know why Shangwan Wan and Jiang Yuqing didn't kill her father and even try to wake him up later, it was a blessing for Chu Luiwei. For this reason, she had been waiting patiently for many days and nights until this day finally came. The scene seemed to be still. Even Yuchi Song and others didn't expect Shangguan Yu's sudden appearance, and they all stood there in shock. Xiahou Rong reacted the fastest. Maybe it was because he had made a vow before, or because he was called out, but he was the first to realize what had happened. He looked up at the man standing above in a daze, and his lips trembled. "Your Majesty? You're awake?" His words finally woke the others up. Shangguan Yu looked up at the sky, narrowed his eyes, and sighed with emotion. "Yes, I'm awake. Why, are you disappointed?" "I don't dare." Xiahou Rong immediately knelt down. "Your humble servant is overjoyed that your majesty has awakened. How can I be disappointed?" Jiang Yuqing also straightened his expression and knelt down to salute. "Congratulations, your majesty. Congratulations, your majesty." This action finally moved the others. Everyone in the square in front of the palace fell to their knees. Their shouts shook the heavens. "Congratulations, your majesty. Long live his majesty." Shangguan Yu lowered his eyes and looked at the people kneeling before him. His gaze was obscure. "Get up." Only then did everyone stand up one by one. However, with Shangguan Yu's presence, the atmosphere had changed greatly compared to before. Most people chose to keep quiet, afraid that they would say or do something wrong and bring trouble to themselves. However, anyone with a brain would have reacted at this moment. How was today a wedding and coronation? This was clearly a trap set up by someone. They were just waiting for a good show to begin. On the surface, everything seemed calm and tranquil, but in reality, the undercurrent was already surging. Jiang Yuqing glanced at Shangguan Wan and reminded her, "Wan, his majesty has woken up. Now your previous efforts are not in vain." Shangguan Wan was stunned and quickly realized something. Her expression changed, and her eyes turned red instantly. "Father!" She quickly ran forward, and 2 lines of tears flowed down. It seemed that she was crying tears of joy. Wan greets father. "Father, it's great that you're awake." As she spoke, she touched her face. Gu Ying murmured in self-pity, "Seeing father safe and sound, Wan injury is worth it." Shangguan Yu glanced at her quietly, but there was no heartache on his face. It seemed that he was indifferent. Immediately, he asked faintly, "Look at this scene. Are you going to ascend the throne?" Shangguan Wan's crying suddenly disappeared, as if it had been forcibly cut off by someone. A trace of panic flashed across her face. She didn't even have time to wipe her tears and hurriedly said, No, because you haven't woken up, so. As an emperor, what he feared the most was that someone coveted his position. Shangguan Wan had obviously violated the taboo. Speaking of which, the Tianling dynasty couldn't always be without a leader. It was reasonable for her to ascend the throne. But in front of Shangguan Yu, these words didn't sound right. After all, he wasn't dead yet. Especially now that he had woken up. When did you wake up?" "I didn't know. I've neglected my duty." Shangguan Wan tried to salvage the situation for herself. However, this trick obviously didn't work on Shangguan Yu. "It's all thanks to Master's was meticulous care that I could wake up so smoothly." Shangguan Wan was stunned. "Master's what?" At this moment, another person walked out from behind Shangguan Yu. It was Zhuo Mingxi. Everyone was stunned for a moment. There was another Zhuo Mingxi beside Shangguan Wan. How could there be 2 of them? Who are you?" Shangguan Wan's expression changed, and she shouted harshly. The Zhuo Mingxi, standing on top of the stairs, suddenly chuckled. "Why are you shouting? Don't you all know me?" As he spoke, he took off the mask on his face. He was handsome, and his eyes were as clear as ice. His smile was charming. It was Jian Fengqi. The moment Shangguan Wan saw Jian Fengqi, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Jiang Yuqing suddenly realized something, and a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Could it be, standing on the 9th step, Shang Guanyu turned his eyes slightly and looked at Chu Luiyue, smiling slightly. Miss Chu, right? Don't worry, I'll be your witness. Chu Luiyue's nose twitched, and tears suddenly gushed out of her eyes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 885. Remember Love Network in 1 second and provide you with wonderful reading. She lowered her eyes and concealed the emotion of the cigarette, but when she looked up again, her eyes were as clear and bright as obsidian that had just been soaked in water. She bent her knees and curtsied, moving her lips. Thank you, Your Majesty. Shang Guanyu looked at the woman standing below, and for some reason, his heart suddenly moved. In fact, when he pretended to be unconscious before, he had heard her voice. At that time, he only thought that this was a smart, quick-witted, decisive woman. Although her status was not high, she could still use all kinds of conditions to force Shang Guanwan and turn a disadvantage into an advantage. Now that he saw her, he realized that she was actually like this for some reason. He felt that he had seen her somewhere before. He quickly recalled in his mind, but after thinking about it, he really had not seen her before. For nearly 2 years, he was basically sick in bed and stayed in Qingfeng Palace, day and night. He even rarely saw other people in the palace, not to mention people like Chu Luiyue, who came from outside Heaven's Canopy. Probably because her eyebrows and eyes were too similar to Yu's. Thinking of this, Shang Guanyu felt a burst of pain in his heart and looked at Chu Luiyue with more benevolence. You worked so hard for you, and I should thank you. If you hadn't taken the initiative to reinvestigate the matter of that year, I'm afraid that many people might be free and happy for a long time. When he said the second half of the sentence, Shang Guanyu's tone was completely cold. Although he didn't scold him, his low and majestic tone was full of the emperor's power, which made people breathless. On the square in front of Lonquan Palace, everyone quieted down and kept quiet out of fear. Yuan, let me have a look at that letter. Hearing this, Yuan Wei immediately responded, stepped forward respectfully, and presented the secret letter with both hands. Shang Guanyu unfolded it and read it carefully. Xiahou Rong stood with his hands down, cold sweat constantly coming out of his forehead. His heart was beating wildly, and all the blood in his body was surging up, as if even his eardrums were about to burst. After a while, his back was all wet. Only a short period of time had passed, yet he actually felt that each day was like a year, and it was extremely torturous. Finally, in this suffocating atmosphere, Shang Guanyu finally opened his mouth. We have never written this letter. His words were clear and light, but they were like thunder that exploded in everyone's hearts. He didn't write anything. That proved that this letter was indeed forged by someone else. No one answered. The air seemed to freeze inch by inch. Shang Guanyu looked at Xiahou Rong. The date on this letter is the 3rd of July. That day, I was discussing matters with Lord Xiahou in the Imperial study, but for some reason, I felt very tired, so I asked Lord Xiahou to leave first and go to the side room to rest. When I woke up again, it was already today. Gasps could be heard from the crowd. Didn't they always say that because His Majesty heard about the death of the Emperor's concubine, he was extremely grief-stricken and was unable to get out of bed? Why did His Majesty say that he had been in a coma since the 3rd of July? One had to know that when the Emperor's concubine died, it was the 10th of July. At this time, who couldn't tell the problem in it? At that time, it was obvious that someone had done something to His Majesty, causing him to fall into a coma. At the same time, this fake document was forged to deceive the 13U to leave West Hill and then take the opportunity to assassinate the Emperor's concubine. It was self-evident who did this. Who else could it be but Xiahou Rong? Lord Xiahou, it seems that you didn't leave the Imperial study immediately that day. Instead, you did a lot of tricks. Shang Guanyu looked down at Xiahou Rong condescendingly, waved his sleeve lightly, and threw the secret letter to Xiahou Rong. Look at it yourself. Did you write this? Xiahou Rong finally couldn't bear it and knelt down with a plop. Your Majesty, you are so wise. I'm innocent. I really didn't do anything. Xiahou Rong cried out while secretly regretting it in his heart. The reason why he kept this letter was actually to use it as evidence to suppress Jiang Yuqing. Although they had done a lot of things together, they didn't trust each other very much. That was why he kept this thing as a precaution. However, I didn't expect Chu Luiyue to find this letter and His Majesty to personally identify it. Now he really couldn't clear his name, even if he jumped into the river. If he had known this, he should have destroyed this secret letter directly at the beginning. In the face of such irrefutable evidence, Xiahou Rong's defense and crying seemed very pale and powerless. Just now, when I was inside, I seemed to have heard Lord Xiahou swearing on the whole Xiahou mansion that if they really betrayed me, they would all die a horrible death. Xiahou Rong was suddenly stunned, and a strong sense of uneasiness suddenly surged in his heart. Your Majesty. Lord Xiahou, I didn't expect you to be so cruel to your own people, Shang Wanyu said lightly and shook his head. After all, I misjudged you. Your Majesty, I really didn't do anything to let you down. Someone is framing me. Someone is framing me. Your Majesty, you are so wise. Xiahou Rong was shocked and hurriedly knelt forward. But before he reached the 9 steps, Shang Wanyu had already opened his mouth. Xiahou Rong rebelled against his superiors and attempted to murder me. This is the first crime. Faking the secret edict and deceiving his superiors is the second crime. As punishment for these 2 crimes, Xiahou Rong's position as Grand Tutor will be removed, and he will be demoted to a slave. He will be beheaded in public at noon tomorrow. In addition, Xiahou Mansion's 3 close relatives will be implicated. The 3 distant relatives, regardless of their gender, will all be sent to the frontier as slaves. They will never be able to return. Each and every word echoed clearly in front of the main hall. Xiahou Rong's movements suddenly paused, and he knelt on the ground dejectedly. The last trace of blood on his face faded in an instant. In an instant, all the strength in his body seemed to have been sucked away, and even his breathing became difficult. It's over, it's over. With this sentence, the entire Xiahou family would be completely destroyed. His wives, concubines, his relatives, and clansmen. Being sent to the frontier as slaves was more terrible than being beheaded directly. It was really a fate worse than death. Your Majesty, please have mercy. For the sake of the Xiahou family's 100 years of loyalty, please spare my wives and children. If the Xiahou family was destroyed in his hands, he would become the sinner of the whole family. Shang Wanyu looked at him with deep eyes. Xiahou Rong, you also know that the Xiahou family's 100 years of loyalty was defeated by you. After all, he had only himself to blame for all this. Xiahou Rong sat on the ground, his heart completely cold. Take him away. Shang Wanyu waved his hand. Just when the people next to him were about to step forward, Xiahou Rong suddenly turned back and pointed at Jiang Yuqing fiercely, shouting with a ferocious look, "It's him! He and the 3rd princess forced me to do this." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 886. If you want to die, let's all die together. At this time, Xiahou Rong had obviously gone completely crazy. His Majesty's Imperial edict had been issued, and the Xiahou clan would have no chance of turning things around. The entire clan, a total of thousands of people, would all be implicated. And the ones who caused all this were Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan. Since he couldn't live, then, no one would have an easy time. Jiang Yuqing's pupils constricted. He stared coldly at Xiahou Rong. Lord Xiahou, watch your words. Don't drag other innocent people down just because you made a big mistake and implicate the entire clan. Shang Wanwan also panicked and hurriedly refuted. That's right. This matter has nothing to do with me. Xiahou Rong, don't talk nonsense. Innocent people, spouting nonsense. Xiahou Rong laughed sarcastically. Jiang Yuqing, are you saying that you're innocent now? Weren't you the one who gave me the drug to His Majesty? Now you jump out to say that you're innocent and want to push all the blame to me to get rid of it. In your dreams. Xiahou Rong simply went all out and directly exposed everything. Everyone was shocked on the spot. The amount of information contained in this sentence was too much. The drug to His Majesty was given by Jiang Yuqing. Didn't that mean that Jiang Yuqing was also involved? If you hadn't promised to give me the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill after everything was done, I wouldn't have agreed to do these things for you. Now that everything has been exposed, no one can escape. He was doomed, so he had to drag a few people down with him. Jiang Yuqing's temples were throbbing, and he couldn't wait to immediately step forward and block Xiahou Rong's mouth. His face was livid, his fists clenched, and he suddenly sneered. Lord Xiahou, you said that I gave you the drug back then. Do you have any evidence? Empty words without any proof. If whatever you say is the truth, then wouldn't everyone here be at your mercy? Xiahou Rong froze and immediately clenched his teeth. Everything that happened back then was done very discreetly. Even that medicine was given to him by Jiang Yuqing in private. Other than the two of them, no one else could prove it. If Jiang Yuqing stubbornly refused to admit it, then it would really be difficult to convict him. Furthermore, my Jiang family is a large Tianling family, and I'm about to marry the princess. What reason do I have to spend so much effort to harm His Majesty first, and then the princess? Xiahou Rong gritted his teeth in anger. This Jiang Yuqing was truly treacherous. This wasn't the only thing he had done back then. Now, he had turned hostile and refused to admit it. That 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was given to me by you as a reward. You dare to deny it? You have to know that after the Empress concubine's death, her funeral was handled by you and the 3rd princess. Only the 2 of you can obtain the 9 Heavens Yuan returning pill. Oh, since that's the case, could Lord Xiahou please take out the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery elixir to prove that you're not lying? Jiang Yuqing asked back. Xiahou Rong had just lost this item a few days ago, so it was impossible for him to take it out now. Sure enough, when Xiahou Rong heard this, he immediately choked, and his face turned red. You know that. It seems that Lord Xiahou can't take it out. Jiang Yuqing interrupted him. In that case, please don't make irresponsible remarks again, Lord Xiahou. It's here. Before he could finish speaking, a clear voice suddenly sounded from the side. Jiang Yuqing's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and saw Chu Luiwei smiling as she took out a black wooden box. The moment he saw that box, Jiang Yuqing's heart suddenly sank. Wasn't this thing stolen? Why was it here with Chu Luiwei? He recalled that the previous secret letter was also stolen from the Xiahou residence. Could it be that all these things were done by Chu Luiwei alone? But she was clearly still in the Dahuang swamp some time ago. How could? This should be what you're looking for, right? Chu Luiwei shook the box in her hand and smiled meaningfully. I can prove that this thing was indeed plundered from Lord Xiaohou's study. Because she had already taken out the secret letter earlier, everyone was very convinced by her words. The 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was the only 9th grade essence pill left behind by Taizu. It had always been carefully enshrined by the Tianling royal family. Previously, His Majesty had indeed bestowed it to the Empress for safekeeping. After the Empress's death, these items were all handled by the 3rd princess and Jiang Yuqing. Such an important item like the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill actually appeared in Chu Luiwei's hands. Clearly, it had been taken away before. This just happened to confirm Xiahou Rong's previous words. Jiang Yuqing used the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill as a reward to help him drug His Majesty and forge a document. Chu Luiwei handed the wooden box to Yuan Wei. Your Majesty, please take a look. Yuan Wei took the item and carefully opened the box. A strong medicinal fragrance instantly spread out. Shang Wenyu's expression changed slightly. This is indeed the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. He looked at Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing, what else do you have to say? Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth. Yes, I didn't take good care of it. So this 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was stolen. However, what Lord Xiahou said just now was indeed slander. Your Majesty, please investigate clearly. He was determined to deny it to the end. Xiahou Rong was extremely resentful and began to search in his mind. He wanted to directly kill Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan as well. But after thinking about it, he was shocked to realize that he really couldn't produce any strong evidence. Jiang Yuqing had always been cautious and didn't leave any traces. Every time they discussed things, there was no one else present. Even now that the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill had been taken out, he still said that it was his lack of supervision that led to the theft and that he didn't send it out himself. Apart from this mouth, Xiahou Rong couldn't do anything to Jiang Yuqing. He was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed at the two and scolded. Good. You don't want to admit it now, right? Then I'd like to ask, if you didn't do anything to His Majesty, then why did you guard Qing Feng Hall so strictly in the past 2 years, and even sent 3 celestial physicians to take care of it in turn? If this isn't a guilty conscience, then what is it? As he said this, he suddenly looked at the crowd and sternly shouted, Let's go. Xiong Yishui, Xiaolang, do you dare to stand up and tell everyone what's going on with His Majesty's body? Right? And Mingxi, the 3 of you have been responsible for taking care of His Majesty from the beginning. Now you can at least say a few words, right? From the moment Shangwan Yu came out, Xiong Yishui and the others have been completely shocked. The 3 of them had indeed taken turns to take care of His Majesty, but they had never seen any signs of His Majesty waking up before. Now that they thought about it, maybe His Majesty had already woken up. Suddenly being pointed at, the faces of the 3 of them became very ugly, and they stammered and couldn't say anything. Jian Fengqi chuckled and said, Since the 3 of you don't want to say anything, why don't I tell everyone? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 887. Jian Fengqi flung the mask in his hand and smiled flirtatiously. Speaking of which, I've been taking care of His Majesty for a long time. Although I'm using Lord Mingxi's name, it's for His Majesty's own good. I believe that everyone here is loyal to His Majesty and won't mind, right? This hat was too big, so no one dared to say no. The fact that he could stand by His Majesty's side and walk out of Lonquan Hall with His Majesty proved that His Majesty trusted him greatly. How could others say anything? Actually, we have to start with the 3rd princess. Jian Fengqi said with a smile. I still remember clearly that when I entered the palace as Lord's Wolf for the first time, I happened to meet the 3rd princess. Does the 3rd princess still remember what you said at that time? Shangwan Wan's face turned pale. She didn't even know when Jian Fengqi had pretended to be Mingxi. How could she remember what she said? But she had always trusted Mingxi. She didn't hide anything from him about His Majesty. At that time, the 3rd princess was very worried about His Majesty, so she asked me to reduce the dosage of medicine and find a way to wake His Majesty up. Jian Fengqi applauded sincerely. Clap, clap, clap. The 3rd princess's filial piety can be seen by heaven and earth. In order to wake His Majesty up again, she was even willing to reduce the dosage of medicine for His Majesty. Based on this point alone, no one here can compare to her, right? Jian Fengqi's words were like a sharp sword that directly pierced Shangwan Wan's hypocrisy. Her strong and calm expression finally cracked. I didn't, she subconsciously retorted, but her expression was panicked and her footsteps were unsteady. He was right. Shangwan Wan finally couldn't hold back. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully to Mingxi beside her, Mingxi, I trusted you so much. How dare you deceive and betray me? If he hadn't teamed up with Jian Fengqi, this wouldn't have happened. I don't know anything. Mingxi wanted to say something, but he felt guilty and didn't know what to say. It was true that he did not know that Jian Fengqi had been secretly using his name to enter the palace, but he was not completely unaware. During this period of time, he occasionally felt that he seemed to have become more sleepy than before, and his mind seemed to have become muddled. Especially when it was his turn to be on duty, this feeling became even more intense. He vaguely felt that something was wrong, but he didn't dare to say anything. He was afraid that if Shangwan Wan and the others found out, they would immediately kill him to silence him. But he didn't expect that he still couldn't hide it. And today, things had turned out this way. Shangwan Wan's heart was filled with hatred, but she also knew that it was useless to say these things now. The only way was to get rid of these things as much as possible and prove his innocence. But how could it be that easy? She thought back to when she was in the Clear Wind Palace. She had taken advantage of the fact that her Imperial father had not regained consciousness and had said many things without concealing anything. If Imperial father were to find out about it. Oh, right, there's also Jiang Yuqing. Jian Fengqi's eyes turned slightly, and the corners of his lips curled up into a wicked smile. His eyes were full of sarcasm. Later on, you also said something similar. I still remember it clearly. The expression on Jiang Yuqing's face seemed to have frozen. His eyebrows, eyes, mouth, and nose were all terrifyingly cold and stiff. The previous scenes kept flashing in his mind. No wonder he felt that Zhuan Mingxi was a little strange some time ago. It turned out that it was because there was indeed a change of people. When he saw Jian Fengqi coming out with his Imperial Majesty just now, he felt very uneasy. Now it really exploded. No matter whether Jian Fengqi was telling the truth or not, he and Shangwan couldn't deny it. After all, he was standing beside his Imperial Majesty now. What Jian Fengqi said now obviously had his Imperial Majesty's permission, and even he was representing his Imperial Majesty's position. The number of times this young master has entered the palace is actually not many. But whenever I meet the two of you, I have to talk about the matter of using medicine back then. Wasn't that what Lord Xiaohe was talking about just now? What? You still refuse to admit it. The evidence was already in their faces, but they still refused to admit it. How thick-skinned? Dead silence. Jiang Yuqing and Shangwan both fell silent. This was no longer a matter that could be cleared of suspicion by denying it. After all, it was very likely that his Imperial Majesty also knew about many of these things. If he had already woken up, then many things were already set in stone. But just when everyone thought that the truth was out and they were finally going to admit their guilt, Jiang Yuqing suddenly spoke. I really didn't know about his Imperial Majesty being poisoned back then. Wanner told me that his Imperial Majesty had taken too much medicine in order to nurse his body back then. That was why he had been in a coma for so long. We did discuss about using less medicine for a long time, but I didn't know it was poison. Hearing this, Shangwan gradually widened her eyes in shock and looked at Jiang Yuqing in disbelief. What did you say? Jiang Yuqing looked apologetic. I'm sorry, Wanner. I was deceived by you before, so I helped you. But now that things are clear, then, I can't speak up for you anymore. You have to bear the corresponding responsibility for what you've done. Chu Luiwei was secretly amazed. If it weren't for the inappropriate atmosphere now, she would have applauded Jiang Yuqing's ability to refute. She had seen what it meant to reverse right and wrong today. Seeing that the matter had been exposed, he took the initiative to abandon Shangwan and only wanted to protect himself. But then again, this kind of ruthlessness and cruelty was his usual style. How could Shangwan be his opponent? Sure enough, after hearing these words, Shangwan completely exploded after a short period of shock. Jiang Yuqing, what are you talking about? You want to push all the blame on me now, don't you? Fine. Since you're heartless, don't blame me for being heartless. Shangwan took a step forward, walked to the middle, and said in a sharp voice, what Xiahou Rong said just now was right. Everything was ordered by Jiang Yuqing. He was the one who attacked father and transferred the 13 U-Guard away. He was also the one who secretly sent people to attack the Chongshu Pavilion. He was the mastermind of all these things. The veins on Jiang Yuqing's forehead bulged. He lowered his voice and said coldly, Wanner, you're confused. But Shangwan didn't care. She had lost all face today and was already emotionally unstable. Coupled with Jian Fengqi and the others' provocation, she couldn't bear it anymore. Anyway, she couldn't deny it, and it would be difficult for her to make a comeback in the future. Not to mention that she had no fate with the throne. She might not even be able to keep her identity as the third princess. After today, it was still unknown whether she would live or die. At this time, Jiang Yuqing actually took the initiative to betray her, so she had no mercy for him. She stared at Jiang Yuqing with scarlet eyes and sneered. Huh? What? You don't want to admit it. Don't forget, you were the one who drugged Shangwan Yu with the energy-dissipating powder for 3 years. Finally, you attacked her on the eve of the wedding and imprisoned her in the Imperial ancestral temple. Digression. The last 2 updates may be a little late, about 1:30. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Iowa. Chapter 888. She was such a smart person. If she wasn't someone close to him, how could she have fallen into a trap and died in the end? Shangwan Wan laughed crazily. Because of anger and resentment, her facial features were distorted and her eyes were scarlet. She looked like an evil ghost. Don't forget that you have a share of the pain she suffered before she died. The sharp voice pierced through the sky, making everyone's heart turn cold. As soon as the voice fell, everyone's face was filled with horror. Shangwan Wan, what did she just say? She said that it was Jiang Yuqing who killed the crown princess. He even planned for it for 3 years. The crown princess didn't die from the so-called qi deviation during cultivation. She was forced to a dead end by them and finally chose to commit suicide. In just a few words, a shocking secret was revealed. Even Yu Qi-song and the others who had already guessed that it was Jiang Yuqing who killed the crown princess were shocked when they heard this. Shangwan Yu suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest, and he staggered. Yuan Wei and Jian Fengqi immediately went forward to support him. Your Majesty, you have to take care. Yuan Wei wanted to persuade more, but when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know how to say it. The crown princess had always been His Majesty's favorite child. Since young, His Majesty had poured a lot of effort into the crown princess. Usually, even if the crown princess suffered a small injury, His Majesty would always feel distressed. Whether it was the coming-of-age ceremony, the imperial court, or the big wedding later, His Majesty always wanted to give the crown princess the best for everything related to her. And that child whom he had doted on and was afraid of suffering even the slightest grievance was now being plotted against and killed. How could he bear it? Jian Fengqi watched from the side, and the smile on his face had already faded. Even when His Majesty knew that it was Shangwan Wan who killed him, His Majesty didn't show such an expression. It could be seen how big of a blow Shangwan Yu's death was to him. Your Majesty, Shangwan Yu waved his hand and slowly broke away from the 2 support. However, he seemed to have aged a lot in an instant, and his face seemed to be covered with a layer of gray. He looked at Shangwan Wan and Jiang Yuqing, suppressing the huge grief and anger in his heart, and asked word by word, I only ask, has you her? Did she do anything wrong to you? You actually want to harm her like this? When was plotted against His Majesty's death, His Majesty's heart. His Majesty's heart ached. To this day, it was just a matter of a few sentences, but hidden within it was how much pain Yuer had gone through, bearing all the torture she had endured. Even if these people died 10,000 times His Majesty's estes. She shrieked. Titus is Teat hurt you hers, as if I was the one who had wronged her. But what she gave me was nothing but charity. Who cared about that? Fathers, I'm also your daughter, but have you ever looked me in the eyes since I was young? When I didn't have enough to eat or warm clothes, and when I was bullied in the palace, did you ever think of me as your daughter? You only have Shangwan Yu in your eyes. Shangwan Wan's voice trembled, as if she wanted to vent all her years of accumulated resentment. Yuer only needs to wave her hand, and she can get whatever she wants easily. She has a magnificent and spacious palace and a high position. She can even take away the man I've liked for many years with just a word. What do I have? If I don't please her and rely on her, I'll have nothing. She's had enough of this lowly life of having to rely on others. Therefore, she wanted to snatch Huayang Palace, the throne, and even Jiang Yuqing. Shangwan Yu looked at Shangwan Wan, who seemed to have gone crazy, with a cold and solemn face and a pained look in his eyes. Even if I've neglected you, you should have come to me. Why did you put all the blame on you? You said it was charity, and if you didn't want it, you could have just said so. You enjoyed her kindness on one hand, but on the other hand, you were jealous and resentful of her. What did she do wrong? In the end, was jealous of Shang Wanyu, so she couldn't bear to see her living well and tried every means to harm her. After doing so many wrong things, she still blamed Shang Wanyu for her betrayal and hurt. She was really unreasonable. Shang Wanwan choked and couldn't say a word. Her chest rose and fell violently, but after a while, she suddenly laughed. See, you're still thinking about her at this time. Unfortunately, she's dead. She's completely dead. Huh. No matter how sad these people are, Shang Wanyu's will never come back to life. Even if everything was exposed today, she thought to herself, even if Shang Wanyu was exposed, she thought to herself. She then looked at Jiang Yuqing with a tinge of craziness in her eyes. Yuqing, since I've already admitted it, you should admit it too. Anyway, we did all those things together, didn't we? See, so many people like her and love her. Even though she's been dead for so long, there's still people running around for her just to ask for an answer. But we have nothing. Only I like you. Do you know that? Only I. As she spoke, she reached out and wanted to pull Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing silently took a step back and avoided her hand as he expressionlessly said, Shang Wanwan, you're really crazy. You treated you like her biological sister, but you treated her like this. I was wrong about you. Shang Wanwan was dazed and then realized that he still refused to admit it. She stared at him for a while and laughed in self-mockery. I'm really stupid. I actually believed you. You missed her for 10 years, but didn't you do it to her without hesitation in the end? What am I? Jiang Yuqing, this person, can even do it to the woman he liked for so many years. Not to mention the others. I, Shang Wanwan, am actually just a chess piece for him. Thinking back on everything that happened these few years, it's like a joke. Jiang Yuqing cupped his fist toward Shang Wanyu and said, Your Majesty, I know that my explanation is very weak, but I really don't know about these things. Jiang Yuqing, we've already reached this stage, but you're still unwilling to admit it, right? Chu Luiyue suddenly asked. Jiang Yuqing paused and looked straight at her. If I didn't do it, why should I admit it? Shang Wanwan's mind isn't clear now, and her words can't be trusted. Oh, Chu Luiyue suddenly laughed. If her words can't be trusted, then what about mine? Jiang Yuqing was dumbfounded. Chu Luiyue suddenly took a step forward, and there seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. Swish, she raised the Tianling's scepter high and then lowered it. The dragon's eyes shone and pointed straight ahead, full of majesty. I forgot to introduce myself, double quotes. I'm Shang Wanyu. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 889. This Empress, Shang Wanyu. This sentence was clear and powerful. It was just a few words, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder. Too many things had happened today. Explosive news came one after another. Just when everyone thought that they had become numb from the continuous bombardment of all kinds of secret news, Chu Luiyue's words instantly set off huge waves in their hearts. It was like a blow to the head. Everyone was shocked on the spot again. This was even more impactful than the previous ones added together. It wasn't just Jiang Yuqing and the others. Shang Wanyu, Jian Fengqi, Yuqi Song. Everyone who had previously agreed to join forces to deal with Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan today was also shocked at this moment. No one expected that Chu Luiyue would jump out and say such a thing when things were getting out of hand. There was a frightening silence in the field. At this moment, it seemed like even breathing had become extra redundant. Everyone looked at Chu Luiyue with their mouths agape. They still couldn't digest what she said just now. The mask on Jiang Yuqing's face finally cracked at this moment. He stared at Chu Luiyue in shock as he stuttered, which was rare of him. You, what did you say? Who are you? Chu Luiyue's red lips curved into a smile. This smile was filled with a myriad of magnificence. It was incomparably noble. In an instant, it was as high as the sun in the clouds and unattainable. In an instant, it was brilliant and dazzling. It carried a noble aura. It made people unconsciously want to submit to her. Everyone's attention was unconsciously attracted by the woman on the field. She was tall and slender. She was dressed in red, and her fine black hair was tied up simply. It was simple and neat to the extreme. She clearly didn't do anything, but the aura on her body had undergone a huge change in an instant. At this moment, she was like a pearl covered in dust that had finally wiped off the layer of dust, blooming with the light that originally belonged to her. The same thought flashed through almost everyone's mind. This is her. This is Chu Luiwei. No, perhaps it should be Shang Wanyu. She stood with her back straight, one hand gripping the heavenly writ scepter tightly as she pointed it at Jiang Yuqing. Every word was like the judgment of a saint. Jiang Yuqing, are you very disappointed that this consort didn't die? If you're still unwilling to admit to everything you've done, then today I'll be the last witness. Who would have thought that things would develop to this point? Princess didn't die. She actually didn't die. The woman who was rumored to have completely disappeared 2 years ago had actually returned. In the blink of an eye, countless thoughts flashed through Jiang Yuqing's mind. No, that's impossible. Back then, he had specially sent people to investigate Chu Liuyue's background, and everything had shown that there was no problem. How did she suddenly become Shang Wanyu? You're not her. Jiang Yuqing almost immediately denied it. She died 2 years ago. There's absolutely no other possibility. Chu Luiwei, don't play tricks here. Do you know what kind of crime it is to impersonate Princess? Although Jiang Yuqing refuted it verbally, he wasn't sure either. If Chu Luiwei was really Shang Wanyu, then many things could be explained. That similar eyebrows and expression, that shocking talent and strength, and the heavenly writ scepter. He was wondering why the heavenly writ scepter was so close to Chu Luiwei. If she was Shang Wanyu, then there was nothing to doubt. Chu Luiwei lifted her chin slightly, her gaze cold as if she was looking at an ant. Are you doubting this consort's identity? You're clearly just an abandoned daughter from a small empire outside heaven's canopy. Jiang Yuqing immediately retorted as he stared at Chu Liuyue's face. Your appearance, figure, age, everything is right here. There's no mistaking it. You definitely can't be Shang Wanyu. That's right. That bitch is already dead. How could she still be alive? Shang Wan, who was beside him, could not help but shout. She pointed at Chu Luiwei with resentment in her eyes. You're just lying. On the day of the wedding, she had already fallen to such a state. She thought that she was already battered and exhausted. Who knew that Chu Luiwei actually dared to call her Shang Wanyu? Shang Wan wasn't afraid of everything she had done before being exposed in public. She also didn't care about the contemptuous gazes of these people. But she absolutely couldn't allow Shang Wanyu to be alive. Absolutely not. At this moment, everyone was looking at Chu Luiwei with different gazes. Shock, suspicion, surprise, nervousness. Are you really you? Shang Wanyu stared at Chu Luiwei without blinking and finally couldn't help but ask. In fact, the moment she opened her mouth, he had already confirmed in his heart that this was his you. In this world, only you would have such a look. No wonder he felt very close to her when he first saw her from afar. It turned out that, however, the more he missed her, the more he longed for her, the more he was afraid that all this was a dream. Shang Wanyu's tone was careful, as if he was afraid of disturbing something and breaking the dreamlike scene in front of him. There seemed to be something surging in Chu Liuyue's heart. She choked in her throat, but there was a bright smile on her lips. Father, it's me. One sentence was enough. The tip of Shang Wanyu's nose twitched, and his eyes lit up immediately. It's you, it's my you. Impossible. Shang Wan's heart was full of hatred. Shang Wanyu has the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, and you just have the Daijing. How can you be her? Chu Luiwei turned her eyes slightly and looked at Shang Wan and Jiang Yuqing, who were almost crazy. She was very clear that the two of them were not the only ones who were suspicious. You want me to prove my identity? Then I'll satisfy you. She suddenly let out a clear shout. Long Yuan sword. Buzz. With a command, heaven and earth shook. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 890. Dark clouds quickly gathered in the originally clear sky, forming a huge black vortex above everyone's head. The wind swirled the clouds and covered the sky. In an instant, the sky darkened. Then, a ferocious and vast aura suddenly descended. The Tianling scepter in Chu Liyue's hand seemed to have sensed something, and it suddenly vibrated. She raised her wrist, and the Tianling scepter quickly flew up and landed back on the black obsidian. The golden light in the dragon's eyes shone in all directions, brilliant and colorful. Rumble. Following this low and powerful explosion, everyone's hearts trembled, and they all looked up. They saw a huge black shadow breaking out of the crazily swirling dark clouds and slowly descending. It was a sword. It was black all over and looked ancient and majestic. Only in the middle was an extremely thin silver groove, and one could vaguely see icy blue lightning flashing and swimming in it. Tianlei's aura was impressive. The hilt of the sword was also black, and the dragon engravings on it were clearly visible and lifelike. As it gradually descended, a hole was instantly torn in the sky. From top to bottom, it was straight and hard. The sharp and terrifying sword aura, wrapped in a biting cold aura, shocked the world. That's the Long Yuan sword. Elder Chen Ku was the first to react. His eyes widened, and his old face was filled with shock and disbelief. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. The Long Yuan sword. It's really the Long Yuan sword? Is this the supreme treasure sword that was rumored to have been forged by the great ancestor himself and used to open up new territories and create the Tianling dynasty? Shang Guanyu also stared at the sword in the air and said in a deep voice, "That's right. That's right. That's indeed the Long Yuan sword. I didn't expect that I would be able to see the Long Yuan sword being brought out of the Tianling god realm in my lifetime." Even Shang Guanyu, who had seen countless storms and waves, couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes when he saw this scene. For thousands of years, the people of the Tianling dynasty had always wanted to bring the Long Yuan sword back to the world, but they had failed time and time again. No matter who it was, no matter what method they used, it seemed like they couldn't do it. Gradually, this became an obsession in their hearts. In the end, it was a precious item left behind by the Taizu, and it was also the origin tool that the Taizu valued the most. Its significance was extraordinary. Therefore, even though they failed time and time again, the people of the Tianling royal family never gave up and kept trying. Over the long years, countless people had been injured because of this, and some had even lost their lives. Even Shang Guanyu had attempted to enter the Tianling god realm back then. Unfortunately, he had returned with injuries. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that such a sacred object that only existed in legends would actually appear before their eyes. Then, under the gazes of countless pairs of eyes, the dragon abyss sword flew into Chu Liyue's hand. She gripped the hilt of the sword and injected a stream of force into it. Wong. A sword hum rang out. It was like the roar of a dragon. At the same time, she raised her arm and raised her sword high. The surrounding heaven and earth energy began to crazily gather towards the Long Yuan sword. Claps of thunder could be heard. It was almost deafening. Long Yuan sword, fall! Chu Liyue shouted. The black sword in her hand slashed down instantly. In an instant, it was as if an invisible hand had torn the sky apart. The swirling clouds suddenly split from the middle and quickly dispersed to both sides. The storm abruptly stopped, and then transformed into two violent waves that spiraled downwards like swimming dragons. Strong winds blew everywhere. The sky above the Longquan Palace actually started to collapse silently. Inch by inch, darkness engulfed the void at a speed visible to the naked eye. The power of the Long Yuan sword was evident. Wong, the Tianling scepter, instantly shone brightly. A faint golden light transformed into a barrier that enveloped the Longquan Palace. The black space collapsed and finally stopped at the edge of the barrier. However, the people standing below could still not help but feel that tyrannical and terrifying pressure. Everyone was shocked and shocked. So, this is the true pressure of the Long Yuan sword. No wonder the Tianling royal family had been trying to invite it out for the past 1,000 years. Once such a divine artifact was used, what was there to be afraid of? In the next instant, a black sword aura flew out from the Long Yuan sword. It went straight for Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing's heart sank fiercely. Danger. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he immediately leaped into the air. He quickly retreated to the back. If this attack landed on him, the consequences would be unimaginable. As a Stage 7 warrior, his combat power was not considered weak. In fact, compared to most of the people present, he was still considered a strong one. However, at this moment, facing the rapidly approaching sword aura, a deep sense of fear and panic surged in Jiang Yuqing's heart. Hence, from the beginning, he directly mobilized all his force and used his fastest speed to retreat without holding back. In the blink of an eye, he had already retreated tens of feet. However, although Jiang Yuqing was fast, the Long Yuan sword aura was even faster. Everyone only saw a black sword aura piercing through the air. In the next moment, it had already caught up to Jiang Yuqing. At this moment, the strong wind blew Jiang Yuqing's clothes, and his black hair danced wildly in the wind. He could almost feel the pain between his eyebrows, as if it was about to be cut by the sharp sword aura. He did not hesitate to set up a barrier in front of him. Bang! The moment the black sword aura touched his barrier, a crisp sound was heard. It was actually his barrier that was pierced through in an instant and completely shattered. Jiang Yuqing was even more terrified. The Long Yuan sword aura chased after him with irresistible force and could be said to be unstoppable. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to block it, not to mention other things. Alarm bells rang in Jiang Yuqing's heart. He retreated again and again. However, how could the current be a match for the Long Yuan sword? In just the blink of an eye, the distance between the two rapidly shortened. The powerful aura almost crushed Jiang Yuqing in all directions. Jiang Yuqing only felt that the surrounding space seemed to be gradually solidifying. Every movement of his began to consume more force than before. His eyes stared fixedly at the black sword aura that was charging straight at him. His heart almost stopped beating. Suddenly, he felt a piercing pain between his eyebrows, and sticky blood slowly flowed down. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth, and an extremely cold aura flashed across his eyes. Just as he was about to make a move, the sword aura arrived. Immediately, the sword aura was deflected and directly slashed across Jiang Yuqing's left arm. Chi! All they heard was the sound of bones breaking and flesh being sliced apart. Then, everyone saw something flying down from the sky. It crashed onto the ground. Looking closely, it was none other than half of Jiang Yuqing's arm. His forearm had been cut off by Chu Liyue's sword. Bang! Jiang Yuqing suffered a violent impact and also fell heavily onto the ground. He dragged dozens of feet on the white marble floor. A long bloody mark was drawn. Chu Liyue pointed her sword at him, and a cold smile appeared on her lips. If I can cut off your arm once, I can cut it off a second time. Now, do you admit it or not? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 891. There was complete silence all around. At this moment, everything in the world seemed to have stopped. All the light shone on the woman in red. Her clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind. Holding the dragon abyss sword in her hand, she shocked the world. Her jade-like eyes were burning with a strong desire to fight. It was as if she wanted to burn all the grudges of the past into ashes. For today, she had waited for too long, and that clear shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, clearly reaching everyone's ears. It shook their minds. Her body was wrapped in a shocking pressure, as if she was a god of war who had returned from hell. Intense pain came from all parts of his body, and the half of his arm that was cut off was bleeding profusely. In a short while, The ground under Jiang Yuqing was dyed red with blood, and he looked battered and exhausted. Chu Luiyue had only used one sword, and Jiang Yuqing was beaten black and blue, unable to retaliate at all. Everyone was extremely shocked when they saw this scene, and they finally couldn't help but gasp in shock. Chu Luiyue and Jiang Yuqing were clearly several levels apart, but with the Dragon Abyss sword in hand, Chu Luiyue could actually crush Jiang Yuqing so easily. The Dragon Abyss sword was actually so powerful and terrifying. At this moment, no one dared to doubt the authenticity of that sword. Other than the real Dragon Abyss sword, what other object in this world could achieve such divine power? Chu Luiyue's sword cut off half of Jiang Yuqing's arm, and also cut off everyone's doubts. Jiang Yuqing's mind was blank, and only that terrible pain came from all parts of his body, almost drowning him. He supported himself up with difficulty and raised his eyes to look at the woman in front of him. She was tall and slender, and her back was straight. With the Dragon Abyss sword in her hand, all the light in the world seemed to be concentrated in her eyes. How familiar was this scene? He was in a trance for a moment. 2 years ago, it was the same situation. She resolutely chose to commit suicide and destroyed Shangwan, Wan's Yuan Meridian, and one of his arms. After that, he spent a lot of energy trying to find a way to get himself back to normal. However, not long after, the same thing happened again. It was her. It really was her. At this moment, Jiang Yuqing knew better than anyone else that the woman in front of him was indeed Shangwan Yu. She didn't die. Instead, she returned with a bone-deep hatred. She returned all the betrayal and pain she had suffered. No wonder he felt that she was very familiar at first sight. No wonder when he interacted with her, he always felt an inexplicable sense of alienation. No wonder he mistook her for someone else when she was standing on the bustling street with only a side of her face exposed. He even thought that he had fallen in love with her. On the eve of the wedding, he invited her to the zither room by the lake to express his feelings. But it turned out that she was her. At this moment, the truth was revealed. At this moment, all sorts of feelings intertwined. Jiang Yuqing had never felt that he was such a joke before. When he was tossing and turning in bed for her, when he was emotionally moved by her, when he said, "Want to marry you," to her, what was she thinking? Until today, when he thought of all the things that happened in the past, it was extremely absurd. It was like a loud slap to Jiang Yuqing's face. I see. Jiang Yuqing's chest shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale and dispirited. However, his eyes were still fixed on Chu Luiyue. This face was so similar to Shangwan Yu's in the past. However, this gaze was completely different from her in the past. At that time, she was noble, gentle, intelligent, and generous. She seemed to have endless patience for everyone. Her eyes were always bright, dazzling like the bright sun, and people could only look up to her. But now, after experiencing pain, she was tenacious and resolute. Her every move was swift and agile. Even though she was smiling, there seemed to always be a coldness that couldn't be separated between her brows. It was as if a thick wall had been built and no one could walk through it. Jiang Yuqing suddenly laughed self-deprecatingly. "It's really you." Back then, he had planned for a long time and used a full 3 years to finally make a move on her in order to ensure that nothing would go wrong. But he didn't expect that she would still be able to escape alive, change her appearance, and return again. He thought that his plan was flawless, but it turned out that it was a failure from the beginning. How could this be? Seeing the Dragon Abyss sword fall and hearing Jiang Yuqing finally admit it, Shangwan Wan's heart suddenly surged with endless hatred. She looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. She still couldn't accept all of this. The scenes that had happened in the past few months kept replaying in her mind. At that time, she only felt that Chu Luiyue and Shangwan Yu looked a little similar, and she subconsciously didn't like them. Later, she found that Chu Luiyue's talent and strength far exceeded hers, and it made her unhappy. After the trip to the Dahuang swamp, she saw Chu Luiyue as a thorn in her side, and she couldn't wait for her to die outside forever. She originally thought that everything had gone smoothly and that she could finally have some peace and quiet. However, she didn't expect Chu Luiwe to come back safe and sound. Chu Luiwe even made an agreement with a legendary fiend, plucked the dancing lotus, and became much stronger. Today, it was directly exposed that she was Shangguan Yu. Shangguan Wan suddenly rushed forward like a madwoman, and her expression was ferocious. "I'm going to kill you. You deserve to die. You ruined my wedding and robbed me of my throne. You bitch, you should have gone to hell long ago." Chu Yue's eyes flickered, and she suddenly laughed. "Shangguan Wan, shouldn't I be the one saying that?" Back then, it was these two people who had joined forces to destroy everything she had, took everything she had, and caused her endless pain. Now, she was only back to take back everything that belonged to her. Shangguan Wan, what right did she have to say such things? Shangguan Wan didn't care. She seemed to have gone crazy, and the force around her surged wildly. That resentful and jealous expression made her already scarred face even more twisted and terrifying. At first glance, she looked like a malicious spirit. However, she had just taken 2 steps when Chu Luiwe flipped her wrist, and the Dragon Abyss sword in her hand pointed directly at her. Chi! A black spatial crack appeared in midair. Buzz! Following that, there was a loud explosion. A formless and terrifying pressure suddenly swept out from the Dragon Abyss sword. The void was compressed by this force, and it started to distort and collapse inch by inch, crushing toward Shangguan Wan. Shangguan Wan knew that something was wrong, and a trace of panic and fear flashed across her eyes. She immediately wanted to dodge to the side. However, she was shocked to find that her body was already unable to move. The space around her had already been enveloped by the heavy pressure of the Dragon Abyss sword. Thud! Shangguan Wan felt as if there was a heavy mountain pressing down on her shoulders, and she immediately knelt down. Both of her knees were crushed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 892. Her flesh and bones hit the ground with a dull thud, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. It made one's scalp go numb. Shangguan Wan's face, which was originally red from anger, instantly turned pale. The last trace of blood had also completely faded away. She couldn't withstand this terrifying force. As she knelt down, her body fell forward, and she immediately spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. She was already injured, and now, with this blow, she was even more dispirited and listless. She fell to the ground, and her hands were rubbed with bloody marks, which were burning with pain. The originally clean and tidy white jade bricks were stained with scarlet bloodstains, which looked hideous. Shangguan Wan knew that it was her blood. She wanted to get up, but she found it extremely difficult. Every inch of her flesh and blood seemed to be suppressed by a great force, which made it difficult for her to even breathe. In the silence, the sound of footsteps could be heard from the front. Shangguan Wan was kneeling on the ground. When she heard this sound, she subconsciously looked up. What entered her sight was a pair of black boots and red clothes. "Since you can't stand properly, then kneel and talk." Chu Yue's voice came from above. Her tone was so light, but in Shangguan Wan's ears, it was no different from deep mockery and contempt. Shangguan Wan's blood rushed to her heart, and she clenched her silver teeth. "What are you doing?" She was just about to force herself to get up when she suddenly felt a chill on her neck. Her body collapsed again. Chu Luiwe was holding Long Yuan and holding it against her neck. A bone-chilling coldness emanated from the thick and heavy sword. The sharp blade of the sword was wrapped in dense, killing intent. It was as if as long as she dared to move, this sword would immediately take her life. Chu Luiwe tilted her head, then suddenly leaned over and stared at Shangguan Wan. The corners of her lips curled up, and the corners of her eyes and brows were incomparably sincere. She said word by word, "Speaking of which, this princess has to thank you. If it weren't for you, wouldn't this princess have to marry Jiang Yuqing? That would be terrible." Shangguan Wan was so angry that she didn't know what to say. for a moment. When Jiang Yuqing, who was at the side, heard this, his expression suddenly darkened as his pale lips moved, but he didn't say anything. It was as if his heart had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife, and it was a sharp pain. He looked at the woman not far away. Her eyes were smiling and her expression was relaxed. Her words were clearly sincere. She really felt that it was a great blessing not being with him. All the gentleness and affection in those eyes had completely disappeared. He originally thought that it would be replaced by utter hatred, but that wasn't the case. She looked at him as if she was looking at a stranger. Other than the anger and resentment of being betrayed, there was not the slightest bit of unnecessary entanglement and infatuation. Jiang Yuqing looked down and suddenly laughed in self-mockery. That's right, she had never been moved by him. So how could she have such feelings? It's just, Shang Wanwan suddenly recalled that Yang Qin had once told her that Chu Luiwei had taken the Long Yuan sword out of the Tianling God realm. However, she didn't believe it at that time and sent the royal family's elders into the Tianling God realm to check. They also said that the Long Yuan sword was still inside. She really couldn't figure out how Chu Luiwei took the Long Yuan sword out and perfectly covered up this matter. However, she didn't have the time or opportunity to think about that now. The cold and sharp sword was pressed against her neck. Shang Wanwan was terrified. She couldn't help but scream, "Chu Luiwei, I'm the third princess of the Tianling dynasty, and I have the Shangwan bloodline. You dare to kill me?" Chu Luiwei looked at her from above, raised her brows slightly, and lightly said, "This Long Yuan sword is stained with the blood of many Tianling royal family members. It doesn't matter whether you're there or not. Do you really think you're a big shot?" Shang Wanwan's heart skipped a beat. She had never entered the Tianling God realm, so she didn't know the exact situation inside. However, Chu Luiwei said that the Long Yuan sword had killed someone from the royal family before. How was that possible? One had to know that this was left behind by the Taizu. "You're spouting nonsense." Shang Wanwan originally wanted to curse out loud, but the Long Yuan sword was pressed against her neck, so she didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. Her voice also became much weaker. However, she couldn't take it lying down. She was forced to kneel on the ground and look up at Chu Luiwei. Her eyes were bloodshot and filled with jealousy. "Chu Luiwei, so what if you're really Shang Wanyu? Your physical body was completely destroyed back then, and this body doesn't belong to you in the first place, right? Even if your soul is still here, it's already a completely different body now. The bloodline flowing in your body is ultimately from a fallen family of a small empire outside the heaven's canopy. What does it have to do with my Shangwan family?" At this point, Shang Wanwan seemed to have suddenly realized something and sneered. Shang Wanyu back then had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian and was a peak stage 8 warrior. And now, other than this consciousness that still exists from head to toe, what other part of your body is worthy of the title of Empress? You would take back everything that originally belonged to you? Why don't you take a look at the current you and see if you have the right to do so? After saying that, she looked at Shang Wanyu, who was standing on the 9th step. "Father, I may have done something wrong, but I'm ultimately a descendant of the Shangwan family, and this woman in front of me has nothing to do with the Tianling royal family anymore. Father, aren't you afraid that her current body and bloodline will taint the legacy of the Shangwan family?" Shang Wanwan was so hysterical that she didn't even care about the Long Yuan sword on her neck. In any case, today had already come to this point, and she definitely wouldn't be able to survive. In that case, there was nothing for her to worry about. As long as she could make Chu Luiwei lose everything, she wouldn't hesitate to pay any price. This hoarse scream spread throughout the entire square. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. Shang Wanwan's words weren't completely unreasonable. The person standing there now was Shang Wanyu, but she was also Chu Luiwei. Everything else was fine, but the problem with her bloodline was indeed not easy to solve. Many people secretly looked at Shang Wanyu, who was standing above, to see what kind of reaction and attitude he would have towards this. After this period of buffer, Shang Wanyu's mood had calmed down a lot. When he heard Shang Wanwan's words, he frowned slightly, and his eyes darkened. There's only one you in this world. Shangguan Wan's heart sank, and the smug and crazy look in her eyes suddenly froze. Then, she couldn't help but sneer. Father, if you really disregard everything and acknowledge her again, you'll be letting down our ancestors. You may be willing, but our ancestors might not be. The current her is simply not worthy of being a member of the Shangguan family. As soon as she finished speaking, a deep voice that seemed to have traveled through time and space sounded between heaven and earth. Who said she's not worthy? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience that comes from Love Network. Chapter 893. His voice was majestic and awe-inspiring. It instantly enveloped the entire area. It was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat, and they subconsciously looked up. They saw that the void between the dark sky and earth was cleansed, and ripples were everywhere. Then, a tall figure slowly appeared. It was like an illusion, but it also carried an unparalleled pressure. It made people subconsciously submit to him. Some people standing nearby could no longer withstand the pressure. Their legs went soft, and they almost knelt down. Countless pairs of eyes stared at him with different reactions. Shock, astonishment, uneasiness, excitement, reverence, and admiration. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He was wearing a long, dark green robe. He was tall, straight, and elegant. His body was translucent, and he looked like a soul. There were no forced fluctuations around him, but just by standing there, he exuded an aura of nobility that was ingrained in his bones. Just when countless people were wondering who this person was, Shangguan Yu was the first to react. He widened his eyes in shock and exclaimed, "Master, you're so powerful." He exclaimed, "Taizu." This voice directly caused everyone to be stunned on the spot. Taizu, Taizu. There was only one person in the world who could make Shangguan Yu call him that, the founder of the Tianling dynasty, Taizu Shangguanjing. But didn't he pass away a long time ago? Rumor had it that he passed away in the Tianling god realm. Why did he appear now? Taizu looked down, and his gaze became gentler. You're Shangguan Yu? Judging for his attitude toward you just now, he's not bad. Originally, Taizu still had some complaints about Shangguan Yu. They felt that he had a lot to do with the current situation. However, seeing that he seemed to be full of love and care for you, Taizu's dissatisfaction lessened a lot. Even his attitude toward Shangguan Yu improved a lot. In an instant, the natural intimacy that originated from the bloodline made Shangguan Yu believe that the person in front of him was indeed Taizu. He couldn't hide his excitement and immediately knelt down to kowtow. Junior Shangguan Yu greets Taizu. Since His Majesty had knelt, the rest of the people could only follow suit. Everyone in front of and behind Lang Kuan Hall also hurriedly knelt down. Greetings, Taizu. There were too many people, and when they shouted in unison, their shouts shook the sky. Get up, Taizu's deep voice sounded. At the same time, everyone felt a gentle force lift them up. That is the power of Taizu. Many people were secretly shocked. It was rumored that Taizu was at the peak of the 9th stage, only a step away from the peri-celestial stage. Looking at it now, it was indeed worthy of its reputation. Just this move alone was enough to easily crush everyone present. Elder Chun Ku and the others were all moved, tears welling up in their eyes. Taizu, it's really Taizu. As elders of the royal family, they were considered the most loyal servants of the Tianling royal family. Now that they were able to see Taizu with their own eyes, it wasn't hard to imagine how excited they were. Taizu's gaze landed on Yuan Wei and the others, and he sighed softly. This is the child of the Yuan family, right? He looks very similar to Mingchen. Yuan Mingchen was the ancestor of the Yuan family. Yuan Wei was in fear and trepidation. Yuan Wei greets Taizu. There were very few clans that remained standing after 1,000 years, and they were still loyal to the Tianling dynasty to this day. It was indeed very rare. Taizu nodded. Everyone present, whether it was the officials in the Imperial court or the people from the sects, had actually yet to recover from their shock. The hall was very quiet. In front of such a supreme figure, everyone subconsciously kept quiet and was incomparably respectful. Among them, only Shangwan Wan was shocked. She knelt on the ground and looked at everything in a daze. Her mind was blank. Her limbs were numb, and her heart skipped a beat. All the blood in her body seemed to have frozen at this moment. Just now, when Taizu appeared, he said something. He said, "She's not worthy." Was he speaking up for Chu Luiyue? Could it be that even Taizu was helping Chu Luiyue? Just as she was filled with doubts, she saw Taizu move and land beside the Tianling scepter. Although Shangwan Yu was also standing beside it, compared to him, his aura was instantly much weaker. Taizu was Taizu. There was no need to say anything. He just stood there, and he was the absolute king. After he landed, he first glanced at the Tianling scepter and shook his head. "It's been so many years. Why are you still so impulsive like a child?" He had clearly seen the Tianling scepter's performance just now. The Tianling scepter was shining brightly, and it seemed to be very righteous. It had helped him guard the Tianling dynasty for so many years, and it was bored to death. Why won't he let me exercise my muscles? Taizu laughed. He couldn't do anything about it. He turned to look at Chu Luiyue and waved. "Girl, come here." As soon as he said that, countless people's tense expressions cracked again. Who was Taizu calling just now? Chu Luiyue. Moreover, his tone was clearly very intimate and doting. Even the way he treated Shangwan Yu just now was far from this. Chu Luiyue blinked. Originally, she didn't want to trouble Taizu. After all, this was her own matter, and she could rely on her own ability to solve it. In fact, Jiang Yuqing and Shangwan Wan had indeed been exposed, and there was no room for them to struggle. However, Shangwan Wan's words just now had clearly provoked Taizu. She glanced at Shangwan Wan, who was kneeling on the floor, from the corner of her eye. She found that Shangwan Wan's face was as pale as a ghost, and her eyes were unfocused, as if she had suffered a huge blow. Her energy and thoughts were all exhausted. Chu Luiyue put away the long yuan sword and walked forward. Countless gazes followed her as she walked, as if they were afraid of missing something. Chu Luiyue walked to the bottom of the 9 steps, stood still, and bowed. Taizu waved again. "Come up." Chu Luiyue hesitated. Ordinary people couldn't climb these 9 steps. Under normal circumstances, only the emperor could stand on it. Although she had already revealed her identity, Taizu and her father were both here. If she went up, after thinking for a moment, she finally lifted her foot and went up. Unlike Shangwan Wan, who had encountered many obstacles when she went up, Chu Luiyue climbed up the steps with incomparable ease. Her feet seemed to be riding the wind. Everyone only saw the corners of her clothes fluttering, and then she was already standing on the 9 steps. Although I haven't appeared in 1,000 years, I should have some say in the matters of the Tianling dynasty, right? Taizu said with a smile and glanced at Shangwan Wan. "Just now, you said that if I accept you, it will cause dissatisfaction with the ancestors of the Tianling dynasty?" Shangwan Wan trembled like a sieve, and her face was pale. "Then today, I will announce to the world. She is the most outstanding junior of the Shangwan clan. Not only will she be the princess, but even the future emperor will also be her. I want to see which bastard dares to jump out and say no." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 894. Taizu had personally announced that he would become the emperor. Such a thing had never happened before, and it would probably never happen again in the future. To allow Taizu to reappear in the world and protect him in every way possible. Not to mention the previous things, just this alone was enough to secure Chu Luiyue's position as the emperor of Tianling. Shangwan Wan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. The last glimmer of hope in her eyes completely disappeared. How could this be? How could this be? Shangwan Yu should have died 2 years ago. How could she still come back? How could she still receive the support of so many people after destroying everything that she had worked so hard to obtain? Even the great ancestor was supporting her like this? Since Taizu had already spoken, What else could others say? Shang Wanwan knew that her last bargaining chip was useless, and her heart was dead. She slowly raised her head and looked at Chu Luiyue, who was standing in front of her. She was stunned for a while before she couldn't help but chuckle. Her face was filled with despair and mockery. Ah, no wonder you were so bold. So you still had this last trump card. Shang Wanyu, you're ruthless. Who could be your opponent? Who can? If only she had known this would happen. She thought that she had won. But in the end, she had suffered a crushing defeat. She had become a joke to the world. At this point, she really didn't have any chance of turning the tables. Jiang Yuqing, who was not far away, frowned when he saw Taizu. The situation today was worse than he had expected. Even Chu Luiyue himself was shocked. He couldn't help but widen his eyes slightly as he looked at Taizu. Taizu, she knew that Taizu was speaking up for her, but to give such a promise, it was indeed far beyond her expectations. You deserve this. Taizu shook his head gently and said affirmatively, whether it's your talent, strength, or character, they are all impeccable. It's the blessing of Tianling to have you. Taizu said this with incomparable sincerity. If it weren't for Chu Luiyue, he would still be trapped in the Tianling God realm, unable to see the light of day. As time passed, his final soul would very likely dissipate without a trace. The Dragon Abyss Sword has recognized you as its new master, and the Tianling Scepter has also recognized you. In this world, there is no one more suitable than you to stand here. There were many people who could obtain the recognition of the Tianling Scepter, but she was the only owner of the Long Yuan Sword. Now, you could be considered to have inherited my mantle. Why can't you immediately take over the Heaven's Writ? Chu Luiyue coughed and glanced at his imperial father. Unexpectedly, Shang Wanyu also agreed with him. Taizu is right. You had been very intelligent since she was young, and she had handled the affairs of the imperial court extremely well. Originally, when she was about to get married 2 years ago, I had planned to pass the throne to her. I didn't expect. A hint of darkness flashed across his face, but it was fleeting. Now that you, has returned safely, everything will naturally return to the right track. Father's body is weak, and I haven't fully recovered. There are indeed some things that I can't handle. Why don't you officially ascend the throne today? Chu Luiyue was confused. Why did these two people casually push her to the throne with just a few words? This doesn't seem too appropriate. The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. What's inappropriate about it? There are many happy events today, and one more is even better. Taizu waved his hand. Everyone's expression became a little strange when they heard that. Many happy events. Taizu, open your eyes and take a closer look at the mess on the ground. Third Princess Shang Wanwan and her newly married husband, Jiang Yuqing, are still covered in blood at this very moment. With the imperial family's dispute having reached this point, only you can say something like there will be many happy things to come. The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched, and he couldn't resist the attacks of the two for a moment. Shang Wanyu clenched his fist and coughed. Look at father's body. I have to rest well. Can you bear to let father tire himself out? Chu Luiyue was confused. Weren't you also strategizing when you were lying in bed for 2 years? Well, why don't we clean up this mess first? Chu Luiyue glanced at the two of them and asked. The matter of Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wan hadn't been completely settled yet. That's true. I almost forgot about this. Taizu clapped his hands and immediately looked down. Other than these two, Xiahou Rong and the others just now. Who else harmed you back then? Who betrayed you? Today, drag them out and deal with them together. Taizu could be said to be swift and decisive. However, Chu Yue's brows furrowed slightly. She had basically investigated what happened back then. However, there were still some questions that she was still puzzled about. For example, why did Jiang Yuqing do this? He clearly didn't like Shang Wanwan, or rather, whoever he liked wouldn't affect any of his decisions at all. In his heart, he only cared about himself. But why was he so painstakingly scheming for her? And there were so many people back then. Some stood firm for her, some ran for her, and some, did they really betray her completely? She couldn't help but look in a certain direction. Mu Qinghe stood outside the crowd. His black armor was exceptionally eye-catching. As if sensing her gaze, Mu Qinghe also looked over. Mu Qinghe, Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. Hearing this, everyone quieted down and looked at the two of them curiously and uneasily. Who didn't know that the Deputy General of the Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe, was personally groomed and promoted by the Empress back then? Something happened to the Empress, but the Black Cavalry didn't react at all. There was something wrong with it. Chu Liu looked at him with a solemn gaze and asked word by word. Say it yourself. Back then, did you betray me or not? Digression. Thank you for all your rewards and tickets. I'm working hard to write in February. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 895. A clear and powerful voice spread throughout the entire Lonquan Hall. Everyone watched this scene silently and subconsciously held their breaths. It was fine if the others colluded with Jiang Yuqing and Shangguan Wan to frame the princess. After all, each of them had their own goals. However, Mu Qinghe was different. Everything he had today was thanks to the Empress concubine. Without the princess, there would be no deputy commander of the Black Cavalry. Mu Qinghe, after all, he was once one of the princess's most trusted confidants. If he really betrayed the princess, he would not be able to escape death today. Furthermore, he would suffer thousands of curses after death. But if he didn't, what exactly happened to the princess's death back then? Countless pairs of eyes were focused on Mu Qinghe. Mu Qinghe raised his head and looked at the woman standing on the ninth step. His mind was in a mess. So, it was really her. No wonder he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity from the first time he saw her in country Yaochun. Later on, he was even worried about her matters several times. Even though he sensed that she seemed to be overly cold and polite to him, he didn't think too much about it. He thought that it was just because of the similar eyebrows. But in reality, now that he thought about it, it wasn't the appearance that was similar. It was clearly the aura and expression. He glanced sideways at Hong Yao, who was on his shoulder. You already knew, right? Hong Yao's eyes flickered as it buried its head under its wings. Actually, it didn't mean to hide it from him, but, however, Mu Qinghe didn't have any intention of scolding it. Instead, he slowly exhaled. The next moment, he walked forward and stood in the middle. Then, he raised his head slightly again and looked at Chu Luiyue, who was standing in front of him. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be gripped by something, and her entire body tensed up. She could treat other people's betrayals as a thing of the past after she took her revenge, but she still felt a little indignant about Mu Qinghe. She didn't understand where the taciturn, stubborn, and loyal Mu Qinghe from back then had gone. So today, she only wanted an answer. She wanted him to say it himself. After a short stalemate, Mu Qinghe suddenly threw the sword in his hand to the side, making a crisp sound. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows moved slightly. Then, she saw Mu Qinghe take off the armor on his body. As today was Shangguan Wan's wedding and ascension ceremony, everything was very grand. Even Mu Qinghe was fully armed and wearing the highest armor of the Black Cavalry's deputy general. At this moment, he took off his black armor. He felt his body. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Then, he knelt down in front of Chu Luiyue. His knee hit the ground with a dull thud. Your Highness, he suddenly bent down and kowtowed. His forehead was pressed against the cold jade floor. A cold chill almost spread through his entire body. Mu Qinghe betrayed Your Highness and is a vile subject. Your Highness, please kill him. Every single word and sentence was clear as day. No one present expected Mu Qinghe to have such a reaction. He didn't argue, complain, or protest. With just one sentence, he admitted his betrayal so straightforwardly. In the current situation, wasn't he courting death? As long as he said that he didn't betray, or that he was forced, there might be a way out. But he didn't. If it was 2 years ago, Who would have thought that Mu Qinghe, who was the most trusted by the princess, would come to this step today? If he had always been loyal to the princess, after today, when the princess took over the imperial power and ascended to the throne, he would be a first-class meritorious official. Unfortunately, Jiang Yuqing glanced at him. A dark light flashed in his eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. He quickly lowered his eyes, hiding the expression in his eyes. Chu Liwa looked at Mu Qinghe, who was kneeling below, with a calm and cold gaze. Everyone looked at her. This time, Mu Qinghe should only have a dead end left in the silence. Chu Liwa spoke again and asked, "What you said now, is every word true?" "Yes." "No lies?" "No." "Difficulties?" "No." "Are you willing to die?" Mu Qinghe was still kneeling there. Previously, he had been lowering his head, but when he heard this, he finally straightened up. His face was calm. "Yes, Your Highness, please grant my wish." Every word and sentence indicated that he was ready to die. Chu Liwa paused, then suddenly smiled. "The last time you asked this consort to grant your wish, it was to go to Dahuang Swamp. At that time, although her status was respected, her power in the imperial court was not stable. Mu Qinghe took the initiative to go to Dahuang Swamp to enlist in the army, to fight for military power for her. At first, she did not agree. Dahuang Swamp was very dangerous. If he went there, he would suffer a lot. More importantly, he might not even be able to keep his life. He was always walking between life and death. If he was not careful, he might stay there forever. However, that was the only time that Mu Qinghe did not listen to her order and knelt outside her palace for a long time. At that time, he also said, "Your Highness, please grant my wish." However, she did not expect to hear these words a few years later. He was actually asking for death. When Mu Qinghe heard this, his heart felt like it was stabbed by something. It was so painful that his body trembled slightly. His expression was gloomy for a moment, but he quickly lowered his head. "Your Highness, please." The remaining two words were stuck in his throat, and he could not say them. Chu Liwa looked at him and sighed softly. In that case, before she finished speaking, she suddenly saw Hong Yao, who was on Mu Qinghe's shoulder, flapping its wings anxiously. It flew around Mu Qinghe and got closer from time to time. It let out a rapid chirp as if it was saying something, or it was trying to persuade her. However, Mu Qinghe was unmoved. Seeing this, Hong Yao was so anxious that it turned around and flew towards Chu Liwa. Everyone saw a ball of blue flame streaking across the sky. In the next second, they saw that Mu Qinghe's blue sparrow had already flown in front of Chu Liwa. It flapped its wings and looked nervously at Chu Liwa, as if it wanted to say something. It was so anxious that tears kept welling up in its eyes. Chu Liwa's heart skipped a beat, and she reached out her hand. Hong Yao. Before her hand could touch Hong Yao, Mu Qinghe, who was below, suddenly realized something. He straightened up and shouted with a frown, his tone warning. Hong Yao's body trembled slightly, but it still fell into Chu Liwa's hands. Big drops of tears rolled down, wetting its fluffy feathers and falling into Chu Liwa's palm, which was slightly hot. Chu Liwa could clearly see that its eyes were filled with grievance and pleading. No, no. At some point, Dumpling had also come out and squatted on Chu Liwa's shoulder, watching this scene. It was rare that it did not make a fuss with Hong Yao this time. After hesitating for a moment, it flew over and circled around Hong Yao, seeming to be at a loss. After a while, it used its head to clumsily and carefully nudge Hong Yao's head. Don't cry. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 896. He was used to Hong Yao's willful and spoiled appearance, but this was the first time he saw Hong Yao like this. Seeing that Hong Yao's tears were still flowing, Dumpling flapped its wings in annoyance and raised its head to look at Chu Liwa. Chu Liwa sighed in his heart and reached out to wipe away Hong Yao's tears. All right, don't cry anymore. I won't kill him." At this moment, everyone was focused on this side. When they heard this, they were all stunned on the spot. What did this mean? The Emperor's concubine was not going to kill Mu Qinghe because of that cyan sparrow. After a moment, whispers finally came from the crowd. It can't be. The Emperor's concubine really doesn't plan to kill Mu Qinghe just for that cyan sparrow. There's something you don't know. Although that cyan sparrow is Mu Qinghe's contracted magical beast, it was actually raised by the Emperor's concubine most of the time. I heard that the Empress concubine pampers it as much as her own magical beast. If Mu Qinghe dies, then this cyan sparrow obviously won't be able to live either. I see. But even so, this is... The Empress concubine's contracted magical beast is a mythical beast. Why would she care about this little cyan sparrow? Who can guess the Empress concubine's thoughts? But that Mu Qinghe, her luck is really good. She actually relied on this contracted magical beast to save her life. Most people were shocked by this, but this was the Empress concubine's matter after all. It was her freedom to deal with it however she wanted. Mu Qinghe betrayed her, but she didn't plan to kill her. What qualifications did others have to say? Chu Luiwei raised his eyes and looked at Mu Qinghe. From today onwards, Mu Qinghe will be stripped of her position as the deputy commander of the Black Cavalry. She will be grounded in the Mu residence. Without my permission, she is not allowed to leave the residence, and no one is allowed to visit her. Jian Fengqi's hanging heart finally relaxed, and he let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, otherwise he didn't know how to plead for mercy for her, but he also felt that something was wrong. Why did he have to ask for death for no reason? When he had the chance, he still had to go and ask. Mu Qinghe was stunned. He thought that what awaited him was a dead end, but he didn't expect. Immediately, a hint of struggle flashed through his eyes, as if he wanted to say something. Your Highness, take him away. At Chu Liuyue's command, a Black Cavalry immediately stepped forward and suppressed Mu Qinghe. It was a tall and sturdy man. Just now, no one had noticed his existence. Now that he had stood up, everyone was shocked to realize that this person's aura was extremely strong. Mu Qinghe frowned. She turned around and saw a familiar face. It was Lei Laosi. He had unknowingly infiltrated the Black Cavalry without anyone noticing. Yoshii, thank you for your hard work. Chu Luiwei said. Mitsui chuckled. Your Highness can rest assured about what I do. Everyone was stunned. Yoshii? Isn't that the one ranked 4th in the 13 U Guards? When did the 13 U Guards actually return to Xiling? And no one noticed that something was wrong. Previously, Jiang Yuqing had spent a lot of manpower and resources to hunt down the 13 U Guards. He didn't expect that not only did he not manage to kill them, but they all followed the princess back to Xiling. Jiang Yuqing frowned even more. As expected, the 13 U Guards had already changed their identities and returned. Previously, when Xiahou Rong mentioned that the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was stolen, he faintly felt that something was wrong. Afterward, he had also sent people to search the city, but they didn't find anything. He didn't expect that they would directly infiltrate the palace today. All of this was clearly planned by Chu Luiwei long ago. She had made up her mind to completely turn the tables today and not leave any way out for them. Jiang Yuqing frowned as he kept thinking about the future. The 13 U Guards had returned, His Majesty had woken up, and even the Taizu had appeared. This was practically a dead end. If he wanted to break out from here, he had to think of another way. Mu Qinghe was completely suppressed by Mitsui. She couldn't say a word as she was taken down just like that. Hong Yao nestled on Chu Liuyue's shoulder and looked at him reluctantly before quickly looking away. When she passed by Jiang Yuqing looked up and gave Mu Qinghe a meaningful look. Mu Qinghe's heart skipped a beat, and a hint of worry flashed across her eyes. Father, Chu Luiwei suddenly spoke. Shang Wanwan has usurped the throne and is sinister and ruthless. She deserves to be punished. What do you think? Although Shang Wanwan has committed many crimes, it's still better to get father's approval to sentence her to death. Shang Wanyu frowned and looked at Shang Wanwan with a heavy gaze. As if sensing something, Shang Wanwan suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness in her heart. Actually, she didn't want to die yet. Father, I did those wrong things in a moment of confusion, but I was also instigated by others. Please let me go this time. Shangguan Wan begged for mercy. Shangguan Yu shook his head. For what you have done in the past 2 years, even if you die 100 times, it won't be enough. The Tianling royal family doesn't have a descendant like you. Shangguan Wan's heart suddenly sank. From today onwards, you're no longer worthy of being a member of the Shangguan family. You can't enter the Imperial mausoleum after death. Your birth mother was born lowly and was just an orphan, so you won't implicate the people of your mother's family. However, the servants of Huayang Palace and Qingfeng Palace will also be executed. I'll take it that I've never had a daughter like you. With every word that Shangguan Yu said, Shangguan Wan's face turned paler. In the end, she knelt on the ground, completely paralyzed, and her face was ashen. This was to completely erase her from the Tianling royal family's records. No, no, father. She knelt forward, but Elder Chun Ku immediately waved his sleeve and stopped her. How dare you? Shangguan Wan's body flew backward and landed heavily on the ground. She was already injured, and this hit was like a heavy blow to her, causing her to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. Shangguan Wan raised her hand, wanting to wipe away the blood at the corner of her mouth. When she looked down, the bright red color on her body instantly pierced her eyes. She suddenly remembered that today was her wedding day. She was still wearing the phoenix coronet embroidered with gold. In fact, he was originally only a step away from the emperor's throne. She thought that after today, she would become the most honorable woman in the entire Tianling dynasty. But now all of that was gone. So many years of hard work had all gone up in smoke overnight. Shangguan Wan's heart was filled with hatred. She was filled with resentment and jealousy, almost burning her up. A black talisman was faintly discernible between her eyebrows. Nothing at all. And that woman, who cares if she's Chu Luiyue or Shangguan Yu? In any case, she had taken everything away from her. Now that she was high and mighty, she was really smug. Shangguan Wan slowly raised her head, stared at Chu Luiyue, and spat out a sentence. What you have is already too much. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She vaguely felt that something was wrong with Shangguan Wan. The next moment, she saw Shangguan Wan's aura suddenly rise. Then, a black blade cut across the sky and went straight for Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from AI Network. Chapter 897. In fact, when they saw Chu Luiyue holding on for a long time, they were relieved and happy. But now, wasn't it too long? This made them worried again. Jian Fengqi glanced at Dumpling beside him, and a sharp light flashed in his icy eyes. He leaned against the stone wall and chuckled. Don't worry, she won't let herself die so easily. Back then, she was framed by Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing. She had chosen to commit suicide, but in the end, she survived and started over again. How could she be so easy to deal with? Let's take advantage of this time to digest all the force that we devoured before. This way, we might not be too far behind her. Otherwise, Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows. Although he didn't finish his sentence, his meaning was obvious. Yu and Jinghong glanced at him in bewilderment. Are you sure? After all, it's infused with divine power. A pervert will always be a pervert, Jian Fengqi said straightforwardly. He looked at the slender figure on the main peak in the distance and closed his eyes. The force around his body surged. Seeing him like this, the rest of the people looked at each other and had no choice but to suppress their thoughts for the time being. They began to cultivate like Jian Fengqi. No matter what, there were many benefits to increasing one's strength. The few of them temporarily calmed down, but the others around ancient Phoenix Mountain weren't so easy to calm down. They thought that Shangguan Yu wouldn't be able to hold on for long and would be defeated soon. But for some reason, it actually held on for so long. From afar, the endless golden light in the sky surrounded Jun Jiuqing and Shangguan Yu, forming two centers respectively. Although the scale and movements of Shangguan Yu's side could not be compared to Jun Jiuqing's at this time. But compared to the beginning, it was much stronger and was obviously still expanding. Not only was she not at a disadvantage, she even seemed to be catching up. How? How is this possible? Many people had the same question in their hearts as they watched this scene. Chu Luiyue had no idea about the reactions of the outside world. This was because all of her energy was focused on regulating the origin power in her body. A cultivator's body was like a container. Depending on their strength and other aspects, the amount of origin power they could store would also differ greatly. Chu Luiyue was currently peak Tier 6. Among cultivators of the same rank, he was absolutely considered one of the best. She had the Daijing Yuan Meridian. At the same time, her physical strength was much stronger than people of the same level. This allowed her to endure the surging origin power with greater endurance and acceptance than others. That was why she was able to hold on until now, exceeding the expectations of Yuan Jinghong and the others. Even so, at the end of the day, she was only at the peak of stage 6. Compared to Jun Jiuqing, the difference was too great. She dared to compete with Jun Jiuqing because the water droplet in her dantian could store an unlimited amount of origin power. However, at the same time, she was faced with a serious problem. Even if the water droplet could store all of the origin power, her body might not be able to withstand the repeated washing and impact of the vigorous origin power. In fact, not long after it started, her body started to hurt all over. Now that an hour had passed, the pain did not lessen. Instead, it became even worse. She even felt that the origin power had turned into sharp blades when it surged into her limbs and bones, ruthlessly scraping through her flesh and bones. The others were far away and could not see that her clothes were already soaked in blood. Even the lower part of her body was dyed red with blood. Compared to Chu Luiyue, Jun Jiuqing's situation was undoubtedly much better. His strength was more than one level higher than Chu Luiyue's, and he had the bloodline of the Dark North royal family. It could be said that he had all the advantages. Even until now, he was still suspended in midair and had not been swept down by the terrifying energy. His strength and determination were evident from this. The aura around him was also increasing rapidly with the passage of time. Of course, he could also clearly feel that a small portion of the energy that was supposed to belong to him was diverted halfway and swallowed by another person. He originally thought that it would end soon, but he did not expect it to not stop after so long. Therefore, Jun Jiuqing lowered his eyes and took a look. With this look, he could clearly see Chu Luiyue sitting cross-legged and bathed in blood. A fierce look flashed across his eyes. His body moved and landed not far away from Chu Luiyue. "Do you want to die?" His face was cold and his voice was icy. "In order to defeat you are willing to give up your life." Chu Luiyue laughed softly. "You think too much. I'm not doing this to defeat you." She was doing this to defeat the remnant consciousness in the divine energy. Since it felt that she was a threat, then she would show it. The red in Jun Jiuqing's eyes grew brighter and brighter, almost as if they were soaked in blood. Then he laughed coldly. "Based on your current strength, you want to compete with I?" Chu Luiyue slowly turned her head and glanced at him. She was still smiling, but the bright red blood stain at the corner of her mouth made her smile even more stubborn and tenacious. "Based on my strength, can't?" Her voice was very soft, but her tone was still arrogant and proud. It was as if there was nothing in this world that she could not do. Jun Jiuqing put one hand behind his back and slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves. He could roughly guess that she wanted to increase her strength as quickly as possible, but this was too risky. What was it that gave her such confidence? Jun Jiuqing's gaze swept across her pale face and laughed ambiguously. However, there was no smile at the corner of his eyes. "Since you want to compete, I will let you lose completely." After he finished speaking, the force in his body surged, and his cultivation level increased again. The golden origin power in the surroundings surged toward him. The golden vortex above Chu Luiyue's head gradually shrank. The force surrounding her also began to rush toward Jun Jiuqing at a speed visible to the naked eye. 9th rank warrior. Sensing this movement, Jian Fengqi opened his eyes and looked over. His expression was slightly serious. No wonder Jun Jiuqing had always been so arrogant in the northern underworld. This talent and strength could indeed be considered top-notch. Moreover, the most important thing was that this might not be his true strength. Seeing that almost all the force was rushing toward him, Chu Luiwei appeared to be particularly weak. This was a battle where the outcome could be seen at a glance. How is that Jun Jiuqing so strong? Mu Hongyu could not help but stand up with an anxious expression. Actually, your majesty has not suffered a loss. After all, you have devoured a lot of force before. Now, as long as you can return safely, everything else is your majesty. Before Yuan Jinghong could finish his words, he suddenly opened his eyes wide in shock. On top of the mountain, an arrow suddenly flew out from the golden light that filled the sky. It went straight for Chu Luwei. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 898. With a clear shout, the dagger in the Lang Kuan Palace that was thousands of miles away flew forward and quickly killed the black stream of light. Golden sand and dust flew into the air. The wind howled. Xue Xue, who was following behind Rong Xiu, immediately shrank its neck and retreated. It had finally gotten a chance to take a shower a few days ago and cleaned up. It didn't want to be as sloppy as before. After a while, the surrounding wind and sand gradually calmed down, and the Red Moon desert seemed to have returned to peace. Only the scorching sun continued to roast the earth, causing it to be scalding hot. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks and looked up. In the vast desert, there was no one else except him. A childish and cold voice entered his ears. "Someone bullied you, or?" Rong Xiu paused, and a golden flame seemed to burn in his eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. "It's the Black Demon Cave." "Why would the Black Demon Cave find her?" This was Lan Zhao's voice. "Why didn't they stay in their own territory? Why did they come to Tianling?" Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly, and he chuckled. That person's physical body was destroyed a few years ago. Now, only his soul is left, constantly residing in the bodies of cultivators and absorbing their cultivation to maintain its life. Whoosh! The yellow sand in front of him moved, and a blurry figure appeared in the lake. It looked like a 4- or 5-year-old child. "You know that person?" Duga Mabao asked. "I've met him once." Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes, and there was an unfathomable look in his deep phoenix eyes. "I just didn't expect him to be so bold now. He even dared to touch you, Lan Xiao said lazily. "Who cares why he went to Tianling? If he wants to touch you, he's going against us." "Diwu, if I remember correctly, how much friendship do you have with the Black Demon Cave in the past?" Don't talk nonsense." Diwu Zhangze immediately denied. "I'm not close to them." Lan Xiao chuckled. "Not close. If you're not close, why would they pay tribute to you for 10 years? I heard that the gifts they give you every year are piled up." "Stop." Diwu Zhangze shouted with a headache. "I was wrong, okay. Back then, I only thought that they went to ask for medicine. How would I know what they did in private? What's more, I didn't help them even once." Duga Mabao said coldly. "You didn't help them because you're already trapped in the desert. If Diwu Zhangze hadn't come here, he would have been killed by the Black Demon Caves." Diwu Zhangze. What was this? He really had nothing to do with the Black Demon Cave. He had only agreed to meet them because of their 10 years of hard work. That meeting, he didn't do anything. So many years had passed. Who would have thought that this matter would be brought up again at this time? Then why don't I go find the people from the Black Demon Cave and warn them?" Diwu Zhangze asked tentatively. Then he thought about it and found it strange. Logically speaking, the Black Demon Cave has no reason to bother Tianling. Is it because of something on the girl? She did have a few treasures. That person was expelled from the Black Demon Cave many years ago. Rong Xiu said indifferently. Duga Mabao and the others were surprised. Expelled? What did he do that even the Black Demon Cave can't tolerate? Duga Mabao asked immediately. Rong Xiu shook his head. That's what you need to ask that person. Then He moved his feet, and his figure quickly transformed into several shadows. After about a quarter of an hour, he finally stopped and stood at the center of the Red Moon Desert beside the Blue Lake. He looked forward and smiled. Now, I've passed the 3 seniors test. According to the agreement, I can leave, right? Duga Mabao snorted. You could have passed this test long ago. Why do you have to pretend to be troubled? From the strength he displayed at the last moment, it was clear that he had been concealing his strength before this. Rongshio smiled, slightly bent down, and politely bowed. He said humbly, "Actually, I just broke through not too long ago. It's all thanks to the seniors' guidance. If not for the fact that I was lucky enough to cross this step, Rongshio would have been stuck here for a long time. You're still pretending to be innocent after taking advantage of me." Lan Xiao couldn't help but scold. He wanted to make things difficult for this kid, but he didn't expect that not only did he not make him suffer, he even took the opportunity to help him break through. This was like throwing a rock to smash the other party's head, to teach him a lesson, but he didn't expect to throw it right at the other party's feet and become his stepping stone. This feeling was extremely sullen. To think that he thought of so many ways to deal with Rongshio, but in the end, it was all for him. Rongshio was already immune to such words. From the day he got together with Yuer, they didn't like him. Thus, Rongshio had been through a lot and could handle it easily. Also, I didn't take good care of Yuer and made the seniors worry about her. It's my fault. Duga Mabao and the others were silent for a moment. Even though they scolded him, they knew how Rongshio treated Yuer. If there was any other way, he wouldn't want things to develop to this stage. After a while, ripples appeared on the surface of the water. Duga Mabao said, "You can leave. If the girl gets hurt again, we won't let you off." Rongshio cupped his fists. "Seniors, take care. I'll take my leave." With that, he finally turned and left. Shue Shue followed closely behind. The figures of a man and a beast soon disappeared into the void. The Red Moon Desert returned to peace again. After some time, Diwu Zhangze asked carefully, "If we let him go just like that, then what should we do next?" They couldn't leave the Red Moon Desert and could only come out once a month. What they wanted to do was very limited. Yuer returned to the Imperial capital, but we couldn't help her much. If she can't even deal with those cats and dogs, then we were wrong about her. Duga Mabao said coldly. "That's true, but the girl was bullied. Are we just going to watch?" Lan Xiao couldn't listen anymore and retorted disapprovingly. "Of course not." Duga Mabao said slowly. "Don't worry, I have my own plans." West Hill, Palace, Lonquan Hall. The dagger flew out and completely strangled that black stream of light. Everything happened in an instant. Chu Luiyue didn't even see the dagger's movements clearly when he heard a shrill and resentful scream. Then, everything in front of him disappeared. That cold and threatening aura was also immediately removed. The totem on the dagger gradually dimmed and disappeared without a trace. Then, it flew back to Chu Luiyue's hand. Chu Luiyue blinked. That aura just now, it was Rongshio. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 899. Seeing the last black light escape, Chu Luiyue subconsciously wanted to continue attacking, but Taizu's voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Don't chase a cornered enemy." In just a moment, that thing left decisively. Chu Luiyue looked back strangely, but saw Taizu's expression was still solemn. Is he worried about the so-called Black Demon Cave? As the Empress, she had a basic understanding of the situation on the continent. Outside Heaven's Canopy, there were countless small countries like Yaochun, and inside Heaven's Canopy, there were mostly powerful existences like the Tianling dynasty. These empires usually had extremely vast territories, and most of them were responsible for guarding Heaven's Canopy. They could be said to be huge monsters on the continent. They also had connections and interactions with each other, but they basically didn't interfere with each other. After all, if this level of existence caused trouble, it would be the lives of millions of people. Moreover, empires that could occupy a place in Heaven's Canopy all had top-notch experts overseeing them. They couldn't be easily provoked. But Chu Luiwe had never heard of the Black Demon Cave. Taizu seemed to be a little afraid. What exactly was he worried about? But Taizu didn't seem to intend to talk about this in detail in front of everyone. He only gave Chu Luiwe a meaningful look and shook his head slightly. At this moment, a painful groan suddenly came from below. Shangwan was lying on the ground unknowingly. She was curled up into a ball in extreme pain, and there was a blood stain that was continuously spreading. At a glance, it was faintly black. Pain, extreme pain. Her mind was blank, and only the pain that she couldn't escape and couldn't avoid was left. Because that person rushed out of Shangwan's body without caring about anything, it caused her force to run amok. Now, her flesh and blood were festering, and some even revealed white bones. Her entire body felt like it was being roasted by a raging fire. It also felt like she was being ruthlessly cut by thousands of sharp blades. Shangwan was in so much pain that she felt dizzy. Today, she finally experienced what it meant to live a life worse than death. Seeing Shangwan's ghastly appearance, many people's faces revealed shock and disgust. They all retreated, afraid that they would be infected by something. Chulua looked at this scene coldly. Then, she walked down the steps and stepped in front of Shangwan. The dragon's sword returned to her hand, and the Tianling scepter also quietly followed by her side. Shangwan heard footsteps and knew that Chu Luiwe had arrived. Her curled up and trembling body finally stopped for a moment, and then she slowly raised her head. Gasps could be heard from the crowd. The scars on Shangwan's face started to fester one after another as well. Looked like a ghost. She to her, to tattoos to her, was to her to the point. To her look to was to look, to her face was like a malicious ghost. She was wearing a bright red wedding dress, so the blood on her body didn't make it obvious. Only the spreading bloodstains on her lower body showed how serious her injuries were at this moment. She raised her head with difficulty and looked at Chu Luiwe. Her eyes were filled with despair and desolation. At this moment, she didn't even have the strength to hate Chu Luiwe. Chu Luiwe looked at her. "What's your relationship with that person just now?" Shangwan opened her mouth. Her voice was weak. You're, now, you, kill me." She knew that she wouldn't be able to survive today. That person just now had destroyed the last bit of life in her body. Now, her body was just a broken shell. She would rather die than suffer the disdain, ridicule, and abuse of countless people. However, Chu Luiwe was unmoved. She only bent down and stared into Shangwan's eyes. "Let me ask you, how much do you know about that person just now?" Shangwan dared to be so arrogant because she had the help of that person just now. Speaking of which, she should know the most about that person. Shangwan laughed at herself. However, before the corners of her mouth could curl up, they drooped down and her face became a little gloomier. Chu Luiwe took a step back and raised her chin. "Chi Han, wake her up." A figure walked out from the black cavalry again. It was Chi Han. He walked straight to Shangwan's side and pulled her hair, forcing her to raise her head. His other hand quickly stuffed a medicinal pill into her mouth. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water, straightforward and decisive. Before Shangwan could cry out in pain, she felt the warm medicinal effect spread between her chest and abdomen. However, this didn't make her feel happy or relieved. Instead, it triggered a deeper fear. She hurriedly struggled and wanted to spit out the medicinal pill. However, the medicinal pill melted in her mouth, and she had already swallowed it. "Now, do you have the strength to speak?" Chu Luiwe asked indifferently. Shangwan's heart was filled with resentment and fear. She couldn't help but wail. What do you want? I know you hate me, kill me." She would rather die than suffer the pain of being trampled on and tortured in public. Chu Luiwe suddenly laughed. Her eyes were curved, but there was a hint of coldness in the corners of her eyes. "You want to die? How can there be such a good thing?" To be able to die quickly, in a sense, was also a relief. Shangwan had inflicted so much pain on her. How about you let her off so easily? Back then, she had chosen to commit suicide without hesitation because she couldn't bear the torture from the two of them. However, she didn't intend to give this opportunity to Shang Wanwan. She blinked, looking at Shang Wanwan as she said slowly and seriously, "You're right. Don't worry. Even if you don't want to say it now, you will say it sooner or later." Shang Wanwan shuddered. In an instant, endless fear surged in her heart. I really don't know. I don't know anything. He appeared on his own. I was forced. Chu Luiyue suddenly shook her head. Don't worry. Think it through and tell me the whole story again. Don't waste my time. Then, she tilted her head slightly and looked at Jiang Yuqing. She shook her head regretfully. TSK, what a pity. Your husband didn't say a single word of mercy for you from start to finish. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 900. Shang Wanwan was already numb. Jiang Yuqing did not treat her with sincerity. She was already clear about it. He couldn't wait to push all the blame onto her. So how could he still speak up for her? Now that she thought about it, the years of love she thought were just her own wishful thinking. This wedding ceremony that she had meticulously prepared and looked forward to had finally become a huge joke. Shang Wanwan closed her eyes in despair. Her tears seemed to have dried up, leaving her heart empty and sorrowful. Immediately, her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. Take her away and take care of her. Chu Luiyue said indifferently. Yes. Chi Han hummed in response, and quickly dragged Shang Wanwan away, leaving behind a patch of scarlet bloodstains on the ground, indicating that something had happened here. Everyone looked at this scene in silence, and they all felt sorrow in their hearts. Who would have thought that Shang Wanwan, who was so proud of her success, would end up like this overnight? From today onwards, the world was going to change completely. From the beginning to the end, there was one person who seemed to be indifferent to this, Jiang Yuqing. Even when he saw his newly married wife reduced to such a state, there was still no expression on his face, as if it had nothing to do with him. Only his blood-stained and empty sleeve reminded people that half of his arm had been chopped off. Chu Liwa looked at Jiang Yuqing and flipped his wrist. Swoosh! The long yuan sword was pointed forward. The black blade was suffused with a cold light and emitted waves of chilling, murderous intent. It was as if it could directly kill Jiang Yuqing in the next moment. Now it's your turn. Your Highness! A panicked and sorrowful cry was heard. Immediately, a figure suddenly rushed up from behind and stood in front of Jiang Yuqing. With a plop, he directly knelt on the ground. It was Jiang Lizhua. At this moment, the proud expression on his face had completely disappeared, leaving only a face full of panic. He knelt there and looked up at Chu Luiyue in despair. Your Highness, please spare Yuqing's life. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned slightly, and he looked at him with amusement. Grand Tutor Jiang, you should have heard and seen everything that happened just now. How can you still have a nerve to beg for mercy now? Jiang Yuqing colluded with Shang Wanwan to poison Imperial father and this consort. Furthermore, he passed down a fake Imperial edict, framed a loyal official, and even attempted to exterminate the entire Chongshu Pavilion. Which of these actions wasn't a crime that deserved to be punished? Now, you want this consort to spare him. Where does your confidence come from? Jiang Lizhua was drenched in cold sweat, his complexion pale. How could he not know how serious these sins were? However, Jiang Yuqing was his eldest son and the son he doted on the most. When he saw Jiang Yuqing's arm being chopped off previously, he almost couldn't help but jump out. However, he was also stunned by everything that happened back then, so he forcefully held it in. But hearing Chu Luiyue's meaning now, he clearly wanted Jiang Yuqing's life. How could he sit still? Yuqing has always liked you, so why would he harm you? Shang Wanwan might hate you, but Yuqing doesn't. There must be a misunderstanding here. 2 years ago, when we were preparing for the wedding, Yuqing personally handled everything in the Jiang residence. He wanted to marry you smoothly more than anyone else, so why would he do those things afterward? Jiang Lizhua knelt on the floor. Your Highness, Yuqing had already mentioned this to me many years ago. He has admired you for many years, so he definitely wouldn't betray you. Chu Yue's lips curved up slightly. This means that I remembered wrongly the person who killed me? Jiang Lizhuo was stumped. Perhaps he was forced, Grand Tutor Jiang. Chu Liyue interrupted him with a calm expression. Don't just beg for mercy for your son. You should also beg for your entire Jiang family. Jiang Lizhuo was suddenly dazed upon hearing this. What? Jiang Yuqing has committed many crimes. Do you think that the Jiang family can completely wash off all of this? Just the fact that he tried to harm father is enough to wipe out the entire family. You can't even protect yourself now. So why do you still have the energy to beg for mercy for Jiang Yuqing? Chu Liyue reminded him kindly. If you really want to cry, why don't you cry for your entire Jiang family first? Jiang Lizhuo really didn't think of this. Too many things happened today, and the impact was too great, so he didn't think of this at all. When he saw Shangwan Wan's pitiful appearance earlier, he was afraid that Jiang Yuqing would end up in the same state. Hence, he hurriedly rushed out. But he didn't expect that the entire Jiang family would be implicated by Jiang Yuqing. Chu Yue's words were like a blow to the head, and it made Jiang Lizhuo suddenly wake up. His dry and pale lips trembled violently, and his eyes were in a daze. Then, immense fear surged out from his eyes. That's right. This is a huge crime that implicates the entire family. If the previous evidence wasn't sufficient, there was still room for rebuttal. But now, the princess and His Majesty have personally stepped forward to prove that the incident back then was indeed Jiang Yuqing's doing. What else is there to argue about? Yuqing, quickly say something. Jiang Lizhuo instinctively looked at Jiang Yuqing. This son has been my pride since he was young, and he is always the most outstanding in all aspects. Later on, he was even more delighted when he agreed on the marriage with the princess. There are so many young talents in the Tianling dynasty, but the princess chose Yuqing. This is something that others can't be envious of. He originally thought that everything would proceed smoothly, but he didn't expect the princess to suddenly die, and the marriage was ruined. Jiang Lizhuo was originally very disappointed, but Jiang Yuqing actually gradually became close to Shangwan Wan again. Moreover, as he had previously helped the princess settle many things, he took the opportunity to take over these matters after the princess died and rapidly became a powerful figure in the entire Tianling dynasty. Regarding this, Jiang Lizhuo was naturally happy. He didn't ask anything in detail and only felt that this son was very capable. Thus, he peacefully enjoyed the crowd's admiration and envy. Who would have thought that he actually did all these things in secret? Now that the truth has been revealed, there's no way to avoid it. Not only did the glory and wealth disappear in the blink of an eye, but even the entire Jiang family was implicated. Jiang Yuqing didn't seem to care about Jiang Lizhuo's scolding and pleading. He looked at Chu Liyue. Other than the initial shock, his emotions seemed to have calmed down. I didn't expect you to still be alive. Once Jiang Yuqing spoke, Jiang Lizhuo instantly slumped to the ground, and his face turned ashen. He admitted it. Chu Yue's red lips curved up slightly. Yes, I'm still alive. Are you very disappointed? Jiang Yuqing didn't answer her, and his expression became a little strange. That person helped you, right? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 901. That person? Which person? Chu Liyue was taken aback for a moment. Jiang Yuqing looked at her expression and suddenly understood something. It seemed like she still didn't remember. This made his mood a little better. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes, and a guess suddenly surfaced in her mind. Jiang Yuqing seemed to know about her memory loss. But just as she was about to ask, Jiang Yuqing's figure suddenly moved, and he quickly went forward. He was at the peak of Tier 7. Even though he was injured, the power that burst out in an instant was still not to be underestimated. A silver light flashed past. It was him who had summoned his own long sword and was about to clash with the long Yuan sword. A murderous intent flashed past Chu Liuyue's eyes, and she raised her wrist. Clang! The two long swords collided fiercely. Crack! A crisp, shattering sound was heard. Jiang Yuqing's sword was directly split into two from the middle by the long Yuan sword. This sword was actually a Yuan instrument that Jiang Yuqing had collected, and it could be considered an excellent sword. Unfortunately, compared to the long Yuan sword, it was far inferior and was directly broken in one exchange. However, Jiang Yuqing's face didn't show any signs of panic. Instead, he took advantage of the moment when the long sword was broken to quickly step forward. He directly grabbed Chu Liuyue's neck with one hand. Chu Liuyue could clearly see that a purplish-black mark seemed to appear on his hand. A dangerous aura was rapidly approaching. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Yuqing was already half a step away from Chu Liuyue. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. He had already reached this step, but he still hadn't given up and instead chose to directly attack the princess. The long Yuan sword's power was indeed extremely strong, but Jiang Yuqing's attack came too quickly. It was also too sudden. Your Highness. Worried voices sounded from all around. However, the time was too short, and the bystanders didn't have time to help. Jiang Yuqing's hand was about to choke Chu Liuyue's neck. Chu Liuyue tiptoed and quickly dodged. At the same time, a transparent flame suddenly gushed out from her palm and quickly wrapped around her body. The blazing heat caused Jiang Yuqing's eyebrows to fiercely jump. Seeing the transparent flames on Chu Liuyue's body, that familiar burning sensation suddenly came. While he was distracted, Chu Liuyue had already dodged his attack. She lifted her leg and kicked out, sending Jiang Yuqing flying. Crack! The sound of his sternum breaking was exceptionally clear. Bang! Jiang Yuqing crashed to the ground. He was already injured, and now that he was hit by Chu Liuyue, his injuries were even worse. However, he couldn't care less about his injuries. He struggled to look at Chu Liuyue in shock. You were the one who attacked me that day. You were the disguised Xiaomu. He didn't feel it before, but now that he was in close combat, he suddenly realized that ruthless and straightforward figure was too familiar. Chu Liuyue curled her lips into a smile. You guessed right. A strong sense of uneasiness surged in Jiang Yuqing's heart. He reached out to touch his chest, as if wanting to take something out. However, Chu Liuyue didn't give him a chance. She stared intently at Jiang Yuqing and shouted clearly, "Explode!" As soon as she finished speaking, Jiang Yuqing felt as if a flame had suddenly surged into his energy center. It was extremely painful. Previously, his lower abdomen had been aching from time to time, but he didn't take it to heart. Now, he was shocked to realize that this energy had actually burned into his energy center. No. As soon as he spoke, he felt a crazy and terrifying energy explode in his energy center. Boom! His core of essence shattered. His energy center was destroyed. The intense pain caused Jiang Yuqing's vision to turn white. He almost fainted. The force that he had used all kinds of methods to store began to run wildly, because he lost control. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before anyone could react, Jiang Yuqing was already lying on the ground, covered in blood and in a sorry state. A fist-sized bloody hole appeared in his lower abdomen. The muscles all over his body had also cracked to varying degrees due to the impact of the force in his body. Bloody scars covered his body, looking extremely terrifying. Jiang Yuqing was already unconscious. Blood splattered into his eyes, making his vision blood red. He lay on the ground, unable to tell which part of his body hurt more. So, it really was her. From then on, no, perhaps even before that, she had already planned all of this. The transparent flame quickly spread around Jiang Yuqing's body. Chu Liuyue looked down at him and tilted her head. How does this feel? They should also experience the bone-piercing pain that she had experienced back then. Jiang Yuqing wanted to use his force to form a barrier to defend against the attack of the transparent flame. However, This fire seed had been hiding in his body for a long time and had directly erupted from the inside out. How could he defend against it? In addition to the damage to his core of essence, he was no different from a cripple now. Jiang Lizhua watched this scene from the side, his heart aching to the extreme. But just now, everyone had clearly seen that it was Jiang Yuqing who took the initiative to attack the Emperor's concubine. In this situation, even death could not wipe out his crimes. How could he dare to plead for leniency or say another word? Jiang Lizhua was in a daze. Thinking that the entire Jiang family would be completely finished from now on, his heart was filled with grief. His blood and qi churned, and his eyes rolled back as he fainted. The black cavalry immediately came forward and brought him away. The scene in front of him was extremely chaotic, but to a certain extent, it was also orderly. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that the Emperor's concubine's people had already made complete preparations. Everything that happened today was under her control. Jiang Yuqing rolled on the ground in agony, trying to extinguish the flames on his body. But how could the karmic fire consecrated in the heavenly square cauldron be so easily extinguished? Jiang Yuqing could even hear the sizzling sounds coming from the bloodstains on his body as they burned. His skin, flesh, blood, and bones were all being tortured horribly. Finally, Jiang Yuqing spat out a few words with difficulty. If you want to kill me, just do it. Chu Luiyue suddenly waved her hand. The transparent flame seemed to have received some kind of order and quickly gathered, finally forming a small ball. Then, it rose into the air and jumped onto Chu Luiyue's palm. If one didn't look carefully, it was really hard to recognize the transparent flame that jumped like a fairy. Then, Chu Luiyue raised her sword, and with a flick of the sword, she cut a bloody wound on Jiang Yuqing's chest. Without waiting for Jiang Yuqing to react, she flicked her finger and planted the flame into Jiang Yuqing's heart. Don't worry, I can't bear to kill you now. Chu Luiyue curved her lips into a smile. In the future, with this flame accompanying you, you shouldn't be lonely. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 902. From now on, Jiang Yuqing would suffer endless heart-burning pain day and night. His pill of essence had been destroyed, so he could only passively endure this kind of torture. She had said that she would make these people pay back the pain she had suffered 1,000 times over. And today was just the beginning. Jiang Yuqing seemed to want to say something, but the intense pain forced him to curl up and struggle. He lay on the ground, covered in blood, as lowly as an ant. Who would have thought that the high and mighty Jiang Yuqing would end up in such a state? Chu Luiyue looked away, raised her head slightly, and wanted to walk forward. Her feet were stained with blood, and every step she took left a bloody footprint. It was a ghastly sight. Countless gazes were focused on her. She was slender and had thin shoulders, but her aura was stern and majestic, and she was unstoppable. She walked step by step to the top of the 9 steps and looked at Shang Wanyu. Father, I didn't discuss today's matter with you. I hope you can forgive me. Although Qi Han and Jian Fengqi had teamed up previously, and they had vaguely guessed something, she didn't tell anyone what happened afterward. Shang Wanyu shook his head and raised his hand. The Tianling scepter seemed to be summoned and flew into his hand. The next moment, Shang Wanyu handed the Tianling scepter to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked. Today, I officially pass the throne of the Tianling dynasty to you. From today onwards, you are the new emperor of Tianling. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but Shang Wanyu continued. From now on, you can do whatever you want. No one in the world can hurt you anymore. Originally, this position belonged to her. No one in the entire Tianling dynasty was more suitable than her. After Shang Wanyu knew what had happened back then, he was actually very regretful. If he had passed the throne to her earlier, Shang Wanwan and the others wouldn't have been able to covet it, and perhaps there wouldn't have been so much trouble later. Now that she had finally returned safely, and with Taizu's help, everything was logical. Seeing the pity in Shangguan Yu's eyes, Chu Luiyue felt a surge of warmth in her heart, and tears welled up in her eyes. She paused and finally took the Tianling scepter with both hands. In an instant, the Tianling scepter emitted a dazzling light that shot into the sky. The pressure was immense. The officials knelt down. Congratulations to the crown princess on the throne. Amidst the blood, that woman had stepped through life and death to return once more. Chu Luiyue's chest seemed to be filled with excitement. Now, I'm a crown emperor. Today was supposed to be the day of the third princess, Shangguan Wan's wedding and coronation. However, when the news came out of the palace, everyone was shocked. In an instant, it caused a huge uproar in the entire West Hill. It turns out that the princess died back then because Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing colluded to frame her. They were the reason why the emperor was unconscious for 2 years. Jiang Yuqing was the mastermind behind the destruction of the Chongshu Pavilion overnight. More importantly, the crown princess didn't die. After exposing the crimes they had committed back then, the situation in the entire Tianling dynasty changed drastically. The Xiahou residents and Jiang residents were executed. Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing's cultivation bases were crippled, their bones broken, and they were imprisoned. The deputy general of the Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe, was demoted and placed under house arrest in the Mu residence. Other than that, many people were implicated and were completely dealt with together. It could be said that after this battle, half of the Tianling Imperial court was bathed in blood. On the same day, the crown princess was officially registered as the empress. Overnight, the situation in the Tianling dynasty changed. Because of these things, the outside world was in an uproar. However, because the crown princess had an extremely high prestige in the Tianling dynasty, after knowing the truth, everyone quickly chose to accept it. In fact, most people thought that the crown princess was much better than Shangguan Wan to be able to return and ascend to the throne. However, they didn't expect that Chu Luiyue was actually the crown princess. Because of this, it wasn't that no one questioned her bloodline, but because Taizu had already appeared, no one dared to say anything. The entire Tianling dynasty was created by Taizu, so who dared to refute his words? Therefore, after a lot of trouble, there weren't any objections, and all kinds of disputes quickly subsided. As for the matter of Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing colluding to harm the crown princess, it attracted many people's reprimand and insults. Of course, Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing wouldn't know about this. Shangguan Wan was placed under house arrest in Huaiyang Palace, and Jiang Yuqing, after seeing the Jiang family being executed with his own eyes the next day, he was also detained in Huaiyang Palace, but he didn't live in the same room as Shangguan Wan. After all, they were husband and wife. Chu Luiyue felt that it wasn't good to break them up. It was quite good to become a pair of distressed mandarin ducks. The handling of the various people in the palace took a full 3 days. The thick smell of blood was everywhere, and it didn't completely dissipate until a few days later. However, Chu Luiyue left these matters to the 13U Palace, and she quickly took over many of the matters in the Imperial Court. Because the changes were too big and involve a lot of people, there were many things that she needed to deal with personally. Fortunately, she was used to doing these things in the past, so it wasn't difficult for her to get started now. Soon, she tidied up everything. On this day, she finally heaved a sigh of relief after reviewing the last bit of memorials. Just as she was about to go out, she happened to see Shangguan Yu pacing back and forth outside the door, as if he was hesitating about something. "Father, why are you here?" Shangguan Yu turned around when he heard the voice. After a few days of rest, Shangguan Yu's complexion was much better. However, he seemed to be a little hesitant. "That, Imperial Father has something to ask you." "Father, just say it." Chu Luiyue smiled. What's the matter that made Father react like this? Logically speaking, he shouldn't have anything to worry about now. Shangguan Yu coughed and carefully glanced at Chu Luiyue. He hesitated for a moment before he finally asked. After hesitating for a while, he finally said this. I heard that you already has a fiancé in country Yaochun. Digression. A crippled February floated by. Update at 6 o'clock p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 903. Chu Luiwei didn't expect her father to come here for this matter. She couldn't help but smile and nod. Yes. Where did Imperial father hear this news? Shang Guanyu didn't expect her to admit it so frankly. He was slightly surprised. Oh, I happened to have a chat with Elder Song the day before. Everyone in the Chongshu pavilion knew of Rongxiu's existence. After all, they had visited him in person and given him a lot of gifts. It was difficult to forget. Chu Luiwei had been busy dealing with the affairs of the imperial court these days and hadn't had time to have a good chat with Yuchi Song and the others. She didn't intend to hide it, so she nodded. I see. I didn't want to hide this from you, but I've been too busy recently, so I didn't have time to tell you. Shang Wenyu felt a little relieved. Looking at his daughter's frankness, it should be okay. Then, how is he? I heard that he is the Prince of Yaochun, called Rongxiu, right? How old is he this year? How is his cultivation? Most importantly, how does he treat you? Shang Wenyu couldn't hold back and asked all the questions in his heart. Chu Luiwei glanced at him faintly. Father, you didn't come here today to see me, but to ask about Rongxiu, right? Shang Guanyu was embarrassed for a moment when his thoughts were exposed. However, this was related to his favorite daughter's marriage after all, so he was naturally cautious and cautious. Ahem, you can say that. After all, he is your fiancé, but I haven't even seen him yet. With Jiang Yuqing as an example, Shang Guanyu was now like a frightened bird. He was afraid that Chu Luiwei would encounter a bad person again. What happened 2 years ago, he didn't want to happen again. Chu Luiwei saw that although he pretended to be calm, his eyes were full of nervousness and worry. How could she not know what he was thinking? She felt a little warm in her heart. Her red lips curled up, and she nodded seriously. He is very good, and he treats me very well. Shang Guanyu carefully observed her expression. When she mentioned Rongxiu, she looked calm, her eyes were bright, and there was a spring breeze between her eyebrows. That was clearly the expression of someone who liked someone very much. He had never seen such an expression on her face before. Even in the past, when she took the initiative to come and say that she wanted to set up a marriage contract with Jiang Yuqing, he didn't. After all, Shang Guanyu had lived for half his life, and as an emperor, he was very good at guessing people's hearts. With one look, I can tell that my precious daughter has feelings for Rongxiu. Shang Guanyu breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, but there was also a faint trace of worry. On one hand, he had always been worried that after experiencing the double betrayal of Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan, Yu Er's mental defense would greatly increase, and she would reject everyone. On the other hand, he was also afraid that this Rongxiu might not be able to give Yu Er the best happiness. She had already suffered too much. He didn't want her to suffer even a little more pain. In that case, now that many things in West Hill have been solved, why don't we find a time to invite him to West Hill? Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows slightly. It was normal for his father to want to see his son-in-law. Okay, after all, it was not the first time he had been here. Now that the dust had settled, it was time for her to tell him her true identity. Hearing Chu Luiwei's words, Shang Guanyu nodded, but still seemed to be a little hesitant. Chu Luiwei came closer with some doubts. Father, what else do you want to ask? Shang Guanyu immediately denied. No. Chu Luiwei looked at him lazily, with a face full of understanding. Shang Guanyu was a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a while, he asked in a low voice, In fact, it's not a big deal, but I just heard that Rongxiu doesn't seem to be in good health. Chu Luiwei almost burst out laughing. You haven't been here for a few days. Have you secretly investigated Rongxiu's background? Shang Guanyu was exposed in front of him, and he was embarrassed and blushed. I'm also worried about you, so I asked in private. Country Yaochun was far away from Heaven's Canopy, but Shang Guanyu could still inquire about some relevant information. However, what he heard didn't make him feel at ease. Everything else was fine, but his physique seemed to be a disease in his mother's womb, and he had never been in good health. Shangguan Yu couldn't help but feel worried. Chu Liyue finally couldn't help but laugh, and his eyes curved. Don't worry, his talent and cultivation are not inferior to mine. In fact, he is even stronger than mine. Everything else was just a rumor. Shangguan Yu was shocked at first, but then he frowned slightly and didn't seem to believe it. Even if you want to speak up for him, you don't have to be so exaggerated. Even in the entire West Hill, there might not be anyone more outstanding than you, let alone Country Yao Chun. It wasn't that he looked down on Country Yao Chun, but compared to the Tianling dynasty, it was indeed very small. Chu Liyue shook his head and said sincerely, "If you don't believe me, you will naturally know when he comes." In fact, she and Rong Xiao did have some unknown issues between them. For example, her identity as the crown princess and his identity as the son of God. Seeing how confident Chu Liyue was, Shangguan Yu was skeptical, but he still nodded in agreement. Don't worry. As long as he is as outstanding as you say, I will definitely support you. As for the rest, you don't have to worry about it. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes. Rest? What rest? Shangguan Yu's eyelids twitched, and he said vaguely, "No, nothing." You see, now that you have returned safely and directly become the emperor, the courtiers are quite concerned about your marriage. Shangguan Yu glanced at her carefully. Well, you also know that many young talents in West Hill City are. Lord Zhao's second son hasn't married because of you, and the Sun family has been asking to see you for a few days. Chu Liyue's eyes twitched fiercely. What the hell is going on? I haven't even settled down on the throne, and they're already putting my marriage on the agenda? But there's no need to be so anxious. How can there be no hurry? There are so many emperors in the Tianling dynasty, and most of them were already married when they ascended to the throne. Some of them were married on the day they ascended to the throne, and the worst ones were also engaged. Only you, now that you are engaged, they don't know much about it. But even if they know, Shangguan Yu didn't finish his words, but Chu Liyue knew what he meant. Even if they knew that she was engaged to Rong Xiao, they probably wouldn't like her. Born in a small empire outside Heaven's canopy, even if he was a prince in their eyes, he was definitely not worthy of Chu Liyue, who was now the emperor of Tianling. At the same time, in the Pingliang Square outside West Hill City, a tall figure had just walked out of the transmission array. He was wearing a hood, and his face was hidden so no one could see him clearly. There were people coming and going around, but not many people paid attention to him. He looked up at the majestic and quaint West Hill City in front of him and suddenly sneezed. Rong Xiao rubbed his nose and murmured in a low voice. His nasal voice sounded particularly lazy. Who is scolding me? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.